Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. My name is Petula, and on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to welcome you all to the second Qatar HR Conference with the theme Excellence in Human Capital Management. I'd like to start first by thanking you all for joining us today in different parts of the world, and we are delighted to welcome you and all our distinguished speakers and guests from all over the region who have committed to sharing their knowledge and past experience with the industry. Firstly, let me introduce our sponsors and partners because of whom this event was possible. This event is sponsored by Taloji Middle East, Talent Management Partner, Elevate, Silver Sponsor, and supported by Qatar HR Forum, the Knowledge Partner, and Bait.com, the Recruitment Partner. Thank you very much for your unwavering support to our media partners, Marhaba, Qatar Living Jobs, and I Love Qatar. Qatar HR Conference is organized by Next Fairs and ZMZ Events as the conference partner. Giving a brief about this event, this is a one-day conference that will start with key sponsor presentation, panel discussion, and 3 sessions focusing on next generation HR leaders and education, training, and HR technology. We have the conference, networking, and exhibition area on this platform, and we hope you will fully utilize this platform in interacting and networking with speakers, exhibitors, sponsors, and industry delegates. To start the conference, I would like to welcome our key speaker, Mr. Amir Murshid, Partnership Director, Taloji Middle East. Mr. Amir has partnered with some of the world's best-known multinational brands and organizations, such as Coca-Cola, Airbus, MetLife, Al Jazeera, and the UN, to design and deliver cross-culturally viable talent management solutions across 4 continents and in more than 20 countries. He has worked with the most significant global HR consultancies such as SHL, FLI, PINA, Seville Consulting, and ANDC. Blending a range of facilitation technique, his approach focuses on raising self-awareness to help individuals overcome internal talent derailers and better leverage key strengths. Welcome, Mr. Amir, and the platform is yours.
All right, thank you so much for the warm welcome and good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I hope everybody can see my slides. So I'll be here with you for the next 15 minutes and roughly 8 slides. Thanks for the warm welcome again. So in terms of myself, I have been a business psychologist for the past 20 years. That's the only thing I've ever done, and that is truly my passion. So it's great to be here and to talk about HR trends in a disrupted world. So why the title? Now, the title disrupted because change has become fast, change has become permanent, and change has become radical. If we look at the definition of disruption, that gives us another sense why this title makes sense. So disruption is defined as radical change within an industry or market due to tech innovations. And the question is, what does that mean for you as business leaders, but more so as HR leaders and professionals? Well, it means there is a lot of demand coming to you. More than ever so, you need to be a specialist and a generalist, and you need to be both simultaneously. And in terms of the roles, you need to be a digital architect, a business leader, a finance guru, a corporate culture black belt, and a people analytics expert. So you see the demands towards you and the need for you to be the heart of the organization, but as well the physical center and the cultural hub has become as big as never before. Now, in terms of practical tips, I wanted to share with you a couple of insights that will help you navigate through this disrupted world. So this slide is based on essentially 3 pieces of research. One by Deloitte. They've asked around 6,000 respondents across the world. One is based on Oracle, that is based around 15,000 people. And then as well, our own empirical research at Taloji, working with 10,000 clients across the world. And what is interesting is that 80% of respondents have indicated that, unsurprisingly, the last couple of years have been very tough on them. Not only financially, but more so in terms of their mental health. Many people feel less motivated to pursue their career goals. And not only is the world disrupted, but they feel as well that their mind and their bodies are disrupted as well. So people are looking to gain or regain control of their lives. They feel they're in a transitional stage where they start questioning everything. And that is where the role of HR leaders is even more important, to be able to give them the foundations of a better future as well. So a lot of demands on your shoulders resting. And the corner pieces are essentially people want to use technology to help them control their future. And the biggest piece of interesting stat that came from these research pieces is that, again, over 80% believe that robots can help them better than humans with their development. So what does that mean for us? That means we need to be on top of our game in terms of technological advances that relate to the HR industry. And you see, we need to use technology to select and develop the best people and transform work. A lot of the challenges is whether your strategy is to buy talent or to build talent, and how to marry those both aspects. The other aspect is that instead of seeing worker mobility and the need for flexibility as a curse, to make the best advantage out of it. Again, through technology, being able to flex your corporate muscles and have an organization that is truly global and using the best people, rather than being just restricted to one local entity or region. The other one around cultivating resilience, courage, judgment, digital fluence, and flexibility. This is more around the competencies that are important to be successful in this new world of work, to be able to survive the digital revolution and to thrive in it. So there are new competencies that are important to be assessed in this new world of work. And then embed well-being on the job and not only off the job. So that means you need to have a well-being strategy that is not only off the job, but as well how you can guarantee and secure the well-being of your people while doing their jobs as well. That is one of the biggest challenges that the HR community is facing, because you're going from an HR professional to kind of a counselor strategist as well. And then obviously as well, the optimization of the people analytics. And that means your data literacy needs to be world-class. You need to understand what is the data that your company captures, what data they are able to capture, whether there is consistency in the first stage, and how to make best use of that to help optimize the people's performance, their well-being, and as well the business performance. Again, a lot of demands on you. The good news is this conference and the organizers have done a fantastic job to give you themes and speakers that relate to all these topics that I mentioned and the trends. So you have, for example, my former business partner, Martin Adams, talking about hybrid and modular assessments. You have a topic around measuring ROI, because as finance gurus and as business leaders, you need to show how your projects link into real value added benefits as well. And then as well, how you need to develop a coaching culture, how you need to instill soft skills into your people to be able to help the broader people. That is one of the main topics as well. And then as well, upskilling a national force. So how to really focus on upskilling Qataris, accelerating their development, and ensuring that they're set to realize the visions of the future as well. Very, very important. When we bucket these themes into different areas, you can see one area is around selection and assessment. One is around employee development, and the last one is around organizational development. So these are the three areas, unsurprisingly, that relate to the talent management cycle. Now, the good news is, Talogy, we focus on that entire talent management cycle. So our core areas of expertise are focusing on assessment and selection, development, and organizational development. That's what we're good at, and that's where we see our home as well. Talogy itself is the marriage between talent and technology. So we have become essentially 20 of the best talent management companies into one entity called Talogy. I myself, in my previous life, together with Martin Adams, we were part of Propel. And even then, 11 years ago, our thinking was there is a need for custom modular assessments. So that's when we started with the technology journey. And with Talogy, we're the only company that can really create custom assessments for you. So that's where we see our niche, that we see our expertise, and that's where we want to help you. So do talk to us about it, and we would like to provide you with guidance at the very least and support you in that. This is the entire cycle which we focus on. So it goes from screening candidates using technology, identifying and developing talent in the best way, not only with robots, I know that is the preference of many of the respondents, but as well with the human touch, because we feel that is something that we can't circumvent, and the technology is not there yet, but you can leverage and use many of the technological advances to help you with the people development. How to engage your workforce, that is an important topic. And then as well, in terms of how to analyze the people data that you have, and then showing you as well, not only the gaps, but how to make it consistent as well. So these are important topics that we want to focus on. And this slide is just me showing off Talogy by numbers. So as I mentioned, we work with 10,000 organizations across the world, and we have the biggest number of business psychologists. And you will see some of the leaders speaking today. My colleague, Amanda, she's gonna head up the panel as a next session. And you will also hear Martin talking about hybrid and modular assessments, among some of the fantastic sessions that are ahead. That is from my side. I wish you to enjoy the conference. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. It would be a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Amir, for this quick start presentation on HR trends in a disrupted world. May I ask you a few questions? And yes, if there are any audience questions, we will be sharing the same with you. What trends excite you most personally, or do you see as most important?
So I personally love executive assessments. I love the making the most senior leaders within the company getting that right. So executive assessment, that's one part. And then I'm really, really interested how we can make best use of technology. I think only a few companies have got it right so far. I think another element that is very interesting to me is the career pathing model. So that means if you have just strict roles defined, that doesn't provide sufficient flexibility. All right, if that was the last question, I'm gonna thank everyone again, and I'm gonna say goodbye. Enjoy the next session, which is a panel discussion with Amanda White. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Amir. It was a pleasure having you with us today. Now we would like to move on to the panel discussion. I want to invite the moderator for this session, Ms. Amanda White, Vice President, Talogy Middle East. Amanda is the Vice President for Talogy, one of the world's largest groups of occupational psychologists. She holds an MBA from Georgetown and ESAT universities, a Bachelor in Psychology and Sociology from the University of Kent, UK, and is an accredited international company director. Today, Amanda is a regular contributor on Dubai Eye Radio, lending her human capital insights to current global affairs, and a weekly contributor to Al Arabiya News. Ms. Amanda, we request you to please take forward this panel discussion.
Good morning and welcome everyone to our panel discussion. I'm really keen that this is a dynamic conversation this morning, so please do send me your questions and insights in the chat. I will be able to see them and I'll be able to put them to the panel. We're here to discuss this morning the government role in the development of human resources, managing the current employment challenges and nationalisation. My name is Amanda White. I'm Vice President here for Tanergy here in the Middle East. We're probably one of the world's largest groups of occupational and business psychologists, specialising in assessment and development of talent. And we've been working here in Qatar and the wider GCC for the past 20 years. I'm delighted to be joined by Najat Al Mahdi, a Director of Strategy, Organisation Development and Human Resources for the Qatar Financial Centre Regulatory Authority.
Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning. Najla has a particular passion for leadership development, executive coaching and change and transformation. And indeed, she's a qualified coach recognised through the ICF.
Thank you.
I'm also delighted to be welcomed by Huda Kalash, business manager at Bait.com. Huda has enjoyed an 18-year career with Bait, where she is probably one of the first employees. And so, as you can imagine, she's seen a great deal of change in that time. Today, she manages the retention business unit for Qatar, UAE and Kuwait. Her career has spanned sales and customer service, corporate excellence, training and human resources. And I hope today that she can share with us some of her insights into what's going on in recruitment, particular, not just here, but actually in the world at present. And finally, by Hassan Minawi, who is the head of business excellence at Qatar Club, a community devoted to health and fitness here in Qatar. He started his career, HR career within the Ministry of Training and Employment in Tunisia, where he's cultivated his passion in learning and development. So good morning to all the panelists. Thank you so much for joining. And good morning to everybody who's joined us online. And just to remind you, I'd love to hear your insights and questions throughout this morning. But let's get us started. I'm going to ask a nice broad question to get us going. We're coming out, obviously, of a global pandemic. Post-Eid, I think we've all seen an increase in confidence. However, I think we would probably all agree that we're coming back to quite different organisations from the ones that we left 2 years ago. We're seeing an increase of remote working, of hybrid working, a struggle to recruit in some key sectors, a struggle to retain in other sectors. We're hearing leaders talking about transformation and engagement. And of course, we've seen a real surge in technology in our everyday work. So what I would love to do is just ask the panelists, what do they see as the challenges for HR directors and for HR professionals here in Qatar and indeed across the wider world? What do you see as the things that we should be really mindful of? Perhaps if I could start with you, Najat.
Yeah, sure. Good morning and good morning to everyone. And thank you very much for the invitation. I really enjoyed the first presentation, so looking forward to the rest of the day. And I think, talking about that first presentation, not going far away from the conversation that Amr started, is the digitalization. And I love the way that he presented that cycle. I think that's a big challenge for us at the moment in terms of identifying those skills and taking that across the employee life cycle within our organizations. So currently from my perspective is the digitalization and understanding, where the world is going with that, but more relevant to us is our actual organization. And what that means for me as an HR professional, kind of leading our people side, is what skills are required. The technology is advancing at flash speed, and some of us can't keep up. But what does that mean in terms of upskilling our individuals and our employees? And I think those conversations need to be ongoing, and that changes, from quarter to quarter, depending on where the business is going as well. I also have a challenge, which is that generational gap now in terms of technology and digitalization. The graduates that we're seeing coming through are very young compared to me, but they are young and they have a lot more knowledge in that area. They were born with technology in their hands. So how do we bring and cross that gap between both what we have in the workplace and also what's coming through? And I do feel, it is something that is an organizational strategy. It's not just HR that has to take that accountability. So one of those challenges is how do we engage with the leaders of the organizations and the line managers to make sure that we enable the employees to be able to deliver on what they need. So the digitalization is one big thing for us, specifically after the pandemic. We've seen it move very quickly. The other challenge I have within my role, and I'm very active in terms of the HR forum, and it's something I will take the liberty of speaking on behalf of my colleagues in the forum, is the importing of global standards. So we all want to be these, great HR professionals with leading HR functions, and I think sometimes there's a mismatch between the expected standards that we bring in and the local culture and understanding what's on the ground. We work across the GCC, very unique in terms of that demographic and diversity. And Qatar, has its own uniqueness, as does the UAE and Saudi, etc. So I'm not putting that as one GCC, but there are challenges across. So I feel like that application of the global standards, how do we really marry them with our local culture and make sure we get best of the both worlds? So we really need to be able to support our HR teams to be able to do what is international best practice, but at the same time really bring that down to the work environment that we work in on a day-to-day basis. So those are my two big challenges going forward.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? As you say, technology is everywhere, and how do we really embrace it? Not only just to cope with it, but actually to really embrace the potential that we're all facing as well as organisations.
Definitely, yeah.
Quite interesting, isn't it? And Hassan, if I turn to you with the same question, what do you see as some of the challenges we as HR professionals are facing at present?
First of all, good morning, everyone, and I'm really happy to be part of this this very nice gathering. I will take it up from where Najat, ended her thoughts. Yes, we are in an era where the challenges are the digitalizations and the gap of the generations and so on. I would stress on a fact which is linked to the digitalization is, when dealing with the new generation, I'm seeing a concern on how organizations are succeeding to retain them, especially after the COVID, because we've seen a lot of movement and there is a big flow of moving out, coming in, applying, and so on and so forth. So I think here the main accountability of the organizations is to start speaking the new generation language, start understanding them, because that's the way how we can minimize the gap, the generational gap that Najat was referring to. Another thing that I'm thinking about is the change management, and I see that we are in a stage where we see that the change, instead of being led by the environment itself, which is something that we are used to as HR practitioners, through new policies, through new rules or whatever, we are initiating the change. Today, we see the change initiated by the people, and the organization should follow, should be aligned to that. So I do believe that we are in a very important moment where, paradigms are already being switched, and there is no more HR function of, the post-COVID and the pre-COVID. So things are moving. We really need to move from the proximity management with our people to more a multi-layer connections management. And actually, this is leading me to another concept, which is the biggest challenge for every HR leader. Is it really still valid to have the concept of the classical leadership, or do we have to embrace more and more the partnership side of it in order to enable those people and empower them, because at the end of the day, they are the leaders of tomorrow. So I do believe that this is the main challenge that we are seeing right now, and that's what we are dealing with in a day-to-day life.
Yeah, very interesting, actually, Hassan. As you say, we are working remotely increasingly, or certainly we have a hybrid model. We've got a lot of young people. There's a lot of technology being used, and as you say, we be looking at the actual leadership model, the way in which we're engaging, we're communicating as a result of that. Yeah, absolutely. Huda, perhaps if I could get your early comments, and then perhaps we'll take it forward from there.
Sure. Hi, good morning, Amanda and everyone. Pleasure to be here today. So actually, based on the nature of our business at Bait, we deal on daily basis with HR professionals who shares a lot of challenges that they face. So for the interest of time, I would like to focus on one that's more about attracting talent. So we noticed there is always like the pre and post the pandemic. So from our conversations, there have been a common challenge about attracting talent. There have been a noticeable drop in the number of applicants per job, despite the growing population. And this is not only in the Middle East. What's interesting is this is something that actually even partners we are connected with across the globe. So other job boards that are part of an alliance where Bait is the Middle Eastern partner have recently shared in a webinar the same actually concern about the drop in the number of people applying to jobs. So a job that in the past used to attract 500 applicants now attracts less than 100. So two key reasons were concluded out of this. One is still the uncertainty in the market post the pandemic. We are still recovering. We're not completely recovered. This is basically, especially people who have been long-term employees in their companies are still very hesitant to actually switch jobs. On the other hand, there are growing interest for the hybrid and remote work. So this becomes actually now a requirement for someone to switch jobs, and especially actually for younger generation. They have more demands now, and they want to be within that trend. So this is something we've noticed as well. Another challenge is about interviewing, because now companies are open to hire literally from anywhere. You can have someone in the US working for your company in Qatar. So this requires more systemized, since we are talking again about automation, better ways of reaching out to larger talents suited in different places, and still like be able to reach out, interview, assess their capabilities. However, making sure that the HR professionals are able to optimize their time and be productive by only meeting and reaching out to those who are most relevant to the job they are hiring for. So these are two key things that were like very common. And I think throughout the conversation, hopefully we can maybe suggest some solutions based on these challenges.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Thank you very much for that, Huda. This idea that, actually what you're suggesting is a fifth of the volume of applicants are applying for jobs, which is actually an extraordinary statement. It's not just a small number, is it? So actually, as you say, there's clearly a prevailing sense of perhaps job insecurity, if you will, and concern that it's not all quite over yet. And I think that probably ties in quite nicely to Hassan's comment about, how to really engage and communicate and actually start relating more to our employees. Perhaps if we go around now and just talk about some of the things that perhaps HR professionals can actually do to manage some of these challenges. Najlat, I know with your particular interest in coaching and development, what are the sorts of things that you think you've been doing perhaps, or you're advocating broadly?
Yeah, sure. You're not wrong there, Amanda, about the coaching and the learning. I think for us, the engagement's a big thing at the moment as well, with this hybrid working, I think, and our ultimate philosophy is really to give employees as much as we can a choice to be able to choose their own working patterns within reason, obviously, as the business is served. So one of the things that we've done recently is any training that we deliver in-house, we also live live stream it. What we've noticed is that people actually do like to come into the office and have that human connection. And I believe Amr picks it up in his speak as well, in his talk, that, you know, it is something that we do strive for. So to be able to have that choice. And then I've identified that post-pandemic, or whether we've really come out of that pandemic and this new way of working, is employee wellness and being there for our employees and understanding what their needs are. Because you know, we think, as Huda quite rightly presented, you know, the data showing something different to what we believe. There's not as many applications, there's not as much movement as we thought, or we were led to believe. So for us, really supporting them with their wellness and talking through things and providing that coaching. And that coaching for us, although it's labeled executive coaching, is that we're actually communicating the message that the coaching is not just there for how you're going to develop your career, but also how work now is blended into your personal life and how we can support that as an organization. So those are really key things for us. And we've tapped into the global talent market. We've been able to, you know, work with what happened through the pandemic and use consultants much more effectively, and actually have the option for our business, which has been a great addition to the skill set that we couldn't necessarily recruit into Qatar before because people didn't want to come. So those opportunities has given us some more great skills. And I think, you know, just in terms of how we do it, communication is really key for us. We keep the communication open, whether that's with leaders, with the employees or the line managers, and just keeping that open dialogue so we understand what's required. You know, if the closer you are to your employees, the more information you'll receive. And it's not just necessarily a formal survey, but that open human connection. So we're a big advocate of that. And we've seen some great outcomes on those results, which has led us to be able to provide more opportunity and support to our employees as well.
Yeah, because that's interesting what you were just saying there. You've now got not only hybrid working in Qatar, but you've also got remote working, people working from different countries. Yeah. And actually, one of the questions that I've got here on the screen is talking about, you know, how do we actually foster that sense of engagement and also culture if we're working A, remotely, and B, potentially from a different country. You know, what sort of steps have you had to take to really kind of get that sense of culture across to those new starters? And
yeah, that's a great question, Amanda. And I think the very basic thing we've done is, you know, a bit like you do on an induction in live person, is when you take that person around to meet, we have almost like a speed induction, just a quick introduction, a coffee, you know, informally. These are the key people in the organization. Interestingly, after the pandemic, and we did our first in person with restrictions, coffee morning, as we call it, or get together, there were people that, you know, we hadn't met face to face, which was really, really interesting. So it was nice to see that, but it was, you know, and this is how it works in the global consulting. You know, you may never meet that person. So that's one thing. Again, they become part of our corporate communication, so they get all the information that they require, and just those that consistent support, so they feel part of something. So they still go through an induction program, even if it is online, and some of them may never come either. And some of the interesting things we've done as well is when some of our people that they work with in the business are traveling back to that country, they will meet up with them in person as well to have coffee and just to make sure that they're connected. So quite different to what we're used to, but you know, we're moving with the times as much as we can.
Yeah, innovative strategies, I think, isn't it? It is a brand new world. I don't know, Hassan and Huda, whether you'd like to add anything to that. What sorts of things are you doing to ensure that furtherance of corporate culture, if you will, during this I'm going to say unusual times, but I guess this is the new normal now, isn't it? You know, the times of potentially not working with people at the next desk every single day. What sort of strategies have you put in place?
Sure. I agree with Najat. The fact that actually at Bayt, we are still working, given the option to work remotely, even though the offices are available, but actually we're still being given the choice if we want to work still remotely or go to the office. So, and the fact that we have offices across the MENA make it again, and like Najat said, we are also became open to hire people even out of the Middle East. So the fact we have people from everywhere, we had to implement implement different things to adjust and make that communication like more and more of communication. So at some point our CEO said more communication, even if let people complain about too much communication versus no communication at all. So I recall that quote, and it's interesting. So this is starting from our daily huddles. So as a manager on daily basis, I connect with my team from different offices on a 15 minutes catch up, all of us with our cameras on, even though it's virtually, but the fact that we have that daily touch with the team all together is very beneficial. We have our monthly town halls run by our CEO and the different departments to update us across the organization on what's happening. We have, even the different events we celebrated as much as possible virtually, where we recognize performance, where we have our trivia games online. So even though it's virtual, but as you all said, we had to adjust to the new trends. So many activities were introduced post the pandemic to bridge that gap in communication, because we're no longer in the same offices and we have people everywhere. So these things are definitely needed. Plus, definitely there is more leverage now on automating a lot of processes. So because we are solutions provider for different solutions, so obviously we use our solutions internally as well. One of the things we've used is the onboarding. So before people even join, they have an account they log into, they get to know more about the company's culture, they watch videos, they get to know more about the people they might be working with. And then post that, there is like so much of automation and tasks internally routed out to the new employees just to get them engaged. So there is leverage definitely on automation and systems in addition to the different activities.
That sounds fantastic. I thank you for that. I've got a nice list of things that I might look into after this. I particularly like the trivia games evenings. It sounds like a great idea. And Hassan, anything you wanted to add there about the sorts of things you're doing? I mean, I'm guessing you've got a particular angle on wellness and health as well, haven't you? So I wondered if perhaps you can share something here.
Exactly, Amanda. Actually, I would rather qualify whatever we are doing as kind of, relifting the branding of HR inside the organization. So we are kind of reviewing it. So what happened during the COVID, with the social distancing, having the people working from home and so on, gave us the frame, let's say, to think and to rethink the HR deliveries. How to at the end of the day, company and every company should work and should deliver and give the added value. But in the meantime, there are a lot of restraints. So since there were a gradual lifting, we've took that as an opportunity to rework the IT infrastructure for the corporate functions. And okay, I'm lucky enough to oversee in my organization the corporate functions, which is the IT, the finance, and the HR. So, the industry 4.0, we talk about the communicating machines. So why not having communicating functions? This would be the baseline for the employees in order to make their journey as easy as possible to enable them perform. And exactly that's what we are doing. We are in a stage of moving from people who are accountable of providing the effort to people who are accountable of results. Means we are empowering them. So we are moving from a specialist or a supervisor or a manager to a stakeholder, to a proper stakeholder, to an owner of his function. And guess what? Even for the measure of that, we move actually from the KPI, which is a classical concept that might be sometimes very complicated to set, especially for non-tangible things like how to measure them and how to measure their impact, to OKRs, objective key results, which surprisingly is enabling the people to communicate with each other. So this is triggering the project management skills with them. So it's fantastic. The journey is really interesting and the results are really, really interesting.
Yeah, very good, very interesting. And I think, as you say, it's so much of this is hinging on technology, isn't it? I mean, just the fact that we're having this conference virtual here today, and I would say 90% of my meetings are now virtual. I mean, this, in all my 30 plus years of my career, I've never been so dependent on technology. And I think something you said earlier, Najat, about technology broadly, about the training, the gap for some people, obviously, and also the fact that we have perhaps the younger people so further forward than their managers and their leaders in some cases. So it's quite an interesting generation issue there. Have you got any thoughts on that at all?
I don't have the answers. we're in experimental phase, that's for sure. Yeah, I think it's just for us from an HR perspective, and we do have quite a robust graduate program, whether that's in our organization or across the sector. It's really just understanding what they come with and understanding what expectations need to be set. So there's no point me potentially putting a fresh graduate on an Excel course if they come with that already. It's kind of taking them to the next level. So I think from our perspective, it's really kind of understanding the skill set they come with already and what they need. And one of the great things we've been able to do with these consultants being in the global setup is being able to provide mentoring to our graduates, which maybe they've never been able to have on the ground with that specific skill set or that particular person. So we're trying to adapt and come up with creative ideas. And, we're looking forward to learning from our colleagues today as well. But it is, nobody really has the answer, I think, at the moment. And we're all learning and we're all experimenting and being innovative, I should say, and supporting our people as best as we can.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think that's a very good point. I think we are in a bit of uncharted territory, aren't we?
Yeah.
We've certainly at Talergy closed one of our offices. We're about to close a second and open a new one, which is all designed around hybrid working. And our focus is, instead of giving everybody a desk each, our focus has been on, let's create a space where people want to come to work, because we're not going to mandate it going forward. We're going to suggest that you continue to be hybrid.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, Huda, you were kind of intimating Bait.com are in the same place. Do you see hybrid working here to stay?
For us, we hope so, and Bait. This is something we wish for. So honestly, because there have been an increase in productivity, and 2 years back we're mostly sales. We're sales organization as well, and we sell solutions. So it was. So prior to the pandemic, we always said, you cannot have someone working remotely. So even if I had to take one day working from home, this was not a very acceptable idea. It's strange how actually now, 2 years fast forward, actually we are very productive. And to us, as long as people are being productive, we trust that they are going to use their time wisely. Then there's no harm, why change it? And people appreciate actually that flexibility. And in fact, it makes them want to work even more and give more. And I personally feel strange to take a lunch break while I'm working actually from home. So I'm actually working even more, but still enjoying the fact that, I'm closer to my family. So if something is working, why change it? And if it is to the interest of people, again, going to what Najat mentioned about well-being and how important it is. So for me, yes, work-life balance actually had worked pretty well since we've been given that choice.
That's very interesting as well, right there, isn't it? As you say, one day off, and it was kind of frowned upon 2 years ago, and now, I haven't seen some of my colleagues for frankly for a couple of months in person. It is a very different world. You also mentioned whilst you're at home, sometimes you actually forget to take lunch breaks. And I think that's one of the other things for us in HR actually, is to think about what is the impact on this kind of work-life balance? How do we go about that? Perhaps, Hassan, you're in the wellness industry. Perhaps I'll turn to you first and see what thoughts you have there.
Actually, I'm sharing the same position that both Najat and Huda already shared. However, I think that we are still in a very early stage to give a statement on, either adopting totally the hybrid model of work or whatever, because still there are several sectors, same as the sector that I'm working in, which is the hospitality. What about the front of house? Because at the end of the day, people customer facing and providing things that cannot really be done remotely and so on. I think still there will be a macro thinking about it in order to see how it goes and so on. Of course, if the pandemics will not be popping up and so on, because at the end of the day, no one was seeing it. Just in the month of Feb 2020, everyone started to get to know with this COVID-19, and even at that stage, no one could speculate the impact would be that high globally. So I think we are in a recovery stage. There will be definitely kind of mixing between both models, the post-COVID, the pre-COVID, and I think that as a matter of fact, definitely there will be kind of mapping the sectors. There will be sectors where I see the hybrid or the remote model working flawlessly without any problem, because at the end of the day, that doesn't require customer-facing configuration. But for some sectors, I think it's too early to give a statement right now.
Yeah, I mean, you make a very good point. Not every industry lends itself to this flexible model. And we need to be cognizant of that, don't we? We can't expect to have the same level of flexibility for everybody. But there's certainly a move here in the GCC. We've certainly seen it in the UAE. And I think we're beginning to see it in Qatar, this increase of more flexible working and part-time working and a greater tolerance to people working from different locations. So we're kind of moving in a bit more of a flexible direction, I think, broadly, aren't we? But as you say, we've got to be mindful of those who perhaps need to be on the ground putting in some FaceTime. Huda, I imagine that impacts you as well in your sales organization too.
True, actually, it's interesting. And we always enjoyed the physical interaction, going to clients and meet them. It's interesting that even though companies have opened up, many of our clients are back to their offices, but they still prefer actually the virtual meeting, no matter how much we actually push for physical. So like you said, it seems to be the direction. And like Hassan mentioned, this, if it works for many industries, yeah, it may not necessarily work for all the industries, but as long as it's working, yeah, that seems to be the preference. And sometimes we beg actually clients to come and meet them in person. We miss that also interaction, even though you enjoy the hybrid, but you do still enjoy, physically going to the client's environment, noticing the surroundings, understanding more about their needs. But as long as this remains to be the preference of the clients, they're more lenient and more, relaxed about, doing the virtual, then you have to adapt to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Najat, can I talk to you actually now about that work-home life balance that we just touched on there?
Sure.
Because I think I imagine in your particular world, in the financial services sector, this is a problem.
Yes,
How do people actually switch off?
Yeah, and I do. Yeah, it's, we always had a flexible working policy. That's not something new. I think people are utilizing it more now that they've seen that they can be productive. There's always a worry that those boundaries, not taking the lunch break, blurring those lines is there. So, we do try and tell people to switch off at a certain time. And we have to go with also the people that we're regulating, the firms that we're regulating. So we do have to be available for them at times as well. So we do take the direction from our clients or our stakeholders, and then internal from our employees. But there's a big part of what you touched on actually, Amanda, is the government regulations in terms of what we can and can't do. It's only recently, which is great to see, Qatar has introduced this part-time rule that they're open to it now, particularly in the government sector for females. Hasn't gone to the males yet, but I'm sure it will come. So to see that they're having those kind of conversations and discussions at that level, you can see that pattern of change is actually, just not from us as HR professionals, but also from the leadership of the country and those, leading the country as well. So I think that's important, and that's comforting for us. Obviously, we have to work around, things like immigration regulations. So being able now to have choice, to be able to have talent working remotely from anywhere, kind of takes away a little bit of that challenge sometimes if that occurs. So for me, starting with the employees, making sure that they're okay that they know where their boundaries are, and also keeping that conversation going, not just internally, but also across the sector. But more importantly, it's great seeing that the government is taking those actions as well. That's very comforting for us.
Yeah, and that leads quite nicely to obviously the, part of the topic for our conversation this morning. What more can government be doing, if anything, in terms of furthering the skill set of the HR profession at large, in terms of the working environment and legislation? What more can we want to see here?
Yeah, definitely. And, we've seen change over the years that I've been in the region, and Qatar has really fast tracked that. So to see more change coming, the World Cup is around the corner. So that's very exciting for us. And I think we need to, again, be prepared what's going to happen as HR professionals. And again, the government's leading in that way. Are we all going to be going to this remote working in November? We don't know yet. We know that the schools are having their holidays changed a little bit. So these are things that we have to be on top of as HR professionals, particularly when there's government directives as well. So that's a big part of what we have to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of from your perspective, Huda, obviously in the broader recruitment space, looking further than just 2022, but looking outward, what sort of initiatives do you think, or what could the role of government be? How can government be more supportive in terms of the HR profession? Are we seeing enough support in terms of the way in which the legislation is going, in terms of flexibility, in terms of visas, in terms of onboarding? Has it become easier? Is it still difficult? Is it something that is there an opportunity for people, for government to become more flexible?
I'm not sure how much we can tap on this here, because I'm managing different units. So between UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar, I think there are slightly some differences. Honestly, what I noticed, probably in Qatar, there is still some restrictions when it comes to visas. This is what we hear from clients. Sometimes they have difficulty bringing people from outside because of the visa quota and some visa restrictions. While in Dubai, we feel it's more open to actually clients are easily now able to hire from everywhere and bring in people. So I think it's just more about, like Najat mentioned, like making things more flexible, because you, as a company, you can have your own rules, but if there are specific rules set by the government, then you have then to actually adjust to abide by these legalizations and rules. So it's not entirely sometimes up to the organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I turn to you, Hassan, and I know we're going back to this kind of home life balance with work. What are you seeing in terms of from your perspective and your clients? Obviously, you've got a health and wellness business. Have you actually put together your recommendations in this particular area? How can we encourage people to take better care of themselves and observe that difference between work and home?
Mm-hmm. Actually, as you mentioned, Amanda, the work-life balance is the main topic that everyone is thinking about. And I've not said that, after the last, let's say, lifting of the restrictions instated by the COVID and so on, I'm seeing a real keenness of the people to re-embrace their healthy way of life, to work out, to chill, to meet with each other, to spend some, let's say, social timing or social how to say it, gathering and so on and so forth. I do believe that this is the real axle, or this is the real stream that people should work on. Organizations should promote this culture of yet maybe sporadically or periodically having some gatherings of where everyone can exchange, either remotely or physically. Definitely promoting the culture of building the synergies. I won't use the word of team building, because if an organization is there, means the team is there. But please work on empowering and making effective the synergies of the team that you have. And the last thing is kind of very philosophical, but I think that we really need to start talking the new language of the world. We need really to start thinking about the new generation as not the thing, which is we are seeing from away. They are here. People who had been born in the new millennium, they are now 22 years, means they are active. So they already are in, and they are doing great.
Yes.
Maybe we need to start changing.
Yes. As you say, it's not perhaps just the workplace that's changed, it's the actual employee that's changed in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that from Huda and Najat about the change in the employee mindset over the last 2 years? If I can draw.
Okay, yeah, I think just an additional thing that I mentioned earlier is that they know what they want. They're more demanding. They set actually their expectations. So actually they come with a list of preferences. So I think, yeah, you have, as Hassan mentioned, and Najat as well, to actually understand their skills, the skills they come from, they come with, and actually have that conversation based on that. And you cannot underestimate this generation. They're way advanced in many aspects, and you need to kind of tailor their based on their needs.
Really engage with them. Najat, any thoughts on the younger generation?
I have some at home, but I don't know if I can understand them yet. No, I echo what the colleagues have said, but also I think people are coming now with what they want, not just the younger generation, as we say, or the graduates, but even, somebody put on the table the other day, I'll work 2 months from this country and I'll be here for 1 month. And, people wouldn't demand that or request that before. So it's great to see people understanding their needs and having time to reflect. People maybe have decided what's more important to them in life. And that's kind of now we're seeing that come through in our conversations and recruiting. We had all that pandemic and kind of the women got a little bit of it hard, but actually men also. And I think we need to take that in consideration. Not everything's always on the females. We do not have our fair share as well. But it's a 50-50, and we have to keep that in mind. When we first did our flexible working policy, it was for local females because our hours are very long compared to other governments. So we targeted that, but actually, males are using them too for their own reasons. And so I think when we're thinking of new policies or things that we can implement or initiatives, is to keep that diversity in mind. Shouldn't just be for one demographic, but let's think about it across the board, whether that's young, middle-aged or experienced employees.
Yeah, diversity inclusion is certainly one of the themes that we've seen a lot in the last 2 years, actually. I think it's really kind of gathered some momentum, actually, hasn't it? What are you doing about that specifically?
No, I think, so diversity and inclusion for us is quite unique, I think, in Qatar, in this region. I think the global conversation slightly different locally. We look at, obviously, the gender and age is a big part of us, and looking at the age requirements in terms of recruitment. We know, for example, younger couples with younger children are much more likely to relocate and probably stay more long-term from our analysis compared to maybe families with the children in high school. So we've noticed that. We also some people split the families up and have a spouse going back and forth. So we offer that flexibility. And then we also know with the people that we have, our current employees, that there are certain points at which they're likely to exit and make family decisions around, again, children and family needs. So in our succession planning conversations, we put that on the table, and we're very transparent with those kind of questions. So we do look at that diversity, and it's an important part of it. So age, gender, and then nationality. We always try and embrace, obviously, the locals. There's a government mandate, but also we're very, very happy, and we continue to embrace that. We want to teach and mentor and transfer that knowledge onto our local population, but also offering them an opportunity to be mentored and supported by the variety of skill set as well is something that we keep at the top of our agenda when it comes to developing them.
Yeah, very good. And thank you very much for that. We've got 5 minutes to go, so I'm keen to get any last reflections from you two, Huda and Hassan. If we start with you, Huda, what are your thoughts, if any, on the D&I kind of conversations that are going on, diversity and inclusion conversations in your organisation?
Yeah, actually, this is ever since I've joined BET 18 years back, diversity was always a key in our organization, to be honest, and equal employment. We have a similar percentage between male, female. So this is something, one of the things, honestly, that I have always admired in our company. The culture, we have people at different ages. We never had, when I joined BET, I was very young at that time. Many companies were shying out from hiring I'm talking 18 years back, from hiring young people and put them into actually managerial roles. Like a year after I joined BET, I became a manager at a very young age, where back then I think it was not a very common thing. So it's definitely something important. And it's a key that I think organization needs to look into these aspects, whether we talk about diversity when it comes to age, seniority, male, female, gender.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, Hassan, I know we've got a couple of minutes, but I suspect you're going to talk about language of the young people. As you say, that this is going to be key now that we start talking their language of the young people.
Yep, definitely. Again, every organization has the accountability of thinking of the best use of the resources available in it. At the end of the day, an organization is a gathering of financial, human, and material resources in order to be able to achieve. So at the end of the day, if we take it as from that definition, then there is no room for setting up some segregations or some favoritism in dealing with the employees and so on. At the end of the day, a manager is also liable and should sometimes initiate the change, like breaking the bias. Well, I'm taking the logo of this year's celebration. So there are some roles that historically had been assigned always to men. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
There are some roles that are always, considered as being only for female. That's not true either. That's exactly what I mean. And we are in a moment, we are seeing some facts changing. We are seeing the other side of it. So it's assuming a 360-degree reality. So
yeah,
we need to be in a position to understand this change and work in alignment with it in order to make the best use of it from the organizational side.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I think it's as you said earlier, I think it's communication both ways. I think everybody here on this panel has talked about the need for greater communication, daily huddles, trivia evenings, chance for mentoring and communication all the way through. And I guess if we are actively listening to our young people, then we can certainly start picking up on some of those needs, I think. And I think as you say, it's across all generations as well. We've seen it with the Great Resignation in the US. Obviously those who are quite mature in the employment market taking a decision that actually they don't want work to look like that anymore. And as Najat said, actually coming into work almost and saying, actually, no, I'm going to be working from here for the next 2 months. Those kind of demands from employees we wouldn't necessarily have seen before. So I think it's an interesting world that we're seeing. I'm conscious that we're actually closing our conversation now. It's 10:39. So any final comments from anybody before we close? Anybody like to close with
I'd just say, I'd just like to say thank you. There was a lot there in that conversation, and I'm interested to see where we go as HR professionals in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Najat. Anything from Huda?
Thank you, everyone. Great insights from everyone on this call, and I'm looking forward for the rest of the sessions of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's live the moment and let's see the future.
Thank you. And thank you for all your questions that you've been posing. It's taken our conversation in a couple of different directions this morning. I've certainly enjoyed it as well. So over now to the team.
We are now starting our first session with the topic of next generation HR leaders adopting new ways of business and becoming tomorrow's employers of choice. To take forward this session, please join me in inviting Mr. Bharat Kumar Jain, Group Head Employee Engagement, Abdul Latif Jameel Group. Mr. Bharat has about 12 years of experience and is an expert in the areas of employment engagement, talent, and performance management. He's an MBA in HR and started his career as an HR consultant and has worked with multiple global organizations across different HR projects. Mr. Bharat, the platform is yours.
My name is Bharat, and thank you very much for having me here. I'm really looking forward to this session one, where we are having a lineup of 6 exciting speakers from different industries, different background, and different topics. And it will be a pleasure for me to moderate this session. So we will have these 6 speakers speak one after the other. And at any point in time, you as an audience, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in, and I will be moderating, and I will be asking the respective speakers these questions at the end of this session. So first topic, which will be covered by Mr. Andrew Stotts. Andrew is an HR professional with more than 30 years of senior HR experience. He has experience in the field of retail, hospitality, leisure, and aviation. He is currently the Vice President for Learning and Development at Etihad Aviation. Prior to Etihad, he has worked with organizations like Al-Shaya, Hilton, Yum, P&O. And he's also an executive coach for American University, Dubai, along with other institutes. People development is his passion, and helping others to overcome obstacles while creating an environment of trust is the motto he lives by. Please welcome Mr. Andrew, who will be speaking on the topic change leadership. Over to you, Andrew.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the kind and generous introduction, Bharat. It's absolutely fantastic to be here. And I just wonder, actually, first of all, do we have are my slides going to go on the screen, or am I just going to just talk to the topics? I'm more than happy to discuss it, obviously, in depth with you. So I wasn't going to share my own screen. I was hoping you were going to share my screen, share my slides. We are talking about change today, so primarily the big focus, obviously, for most human beings is how we kind of manage change. I always come to the change agenda with effectively what I would call my 4 human needs. You can sort of see them behind me there. So I think the first thing we have to understand with change is that most of us experience change in our lives, and all of us will go through the same kind of sequence of events as we encounter change. I suppose the biggest and the most transformational part of that is this feeling of anxiety and perhaps frustration about what's happening to us. And often we kind of go on that curve. We feel anxiety, we feel fear, we may get frustrated by what's going on, and ultimately we start coming through that kind of curve and move into a future state. And of course, all of that is significantly helped if we are respected through the process, if we're heard through the process, if we're acknowledged through the process, and we're remembered through the process. I think that's absolutely very, very important. So, for me, this is all about understanding how people interact with change. And when we talk about change leadership as my organization, and I've had a lot of experience. I was head of change at Al Shaya Group for a while as well, and I've worked with some very, very sort of senior leaders around change. And I suppose whenever I come into a change situation, which is fairly frequent if I'm honest, and definitely through my career, when we look at change, actually, as a senior leader within sort of many organizations in the past, I tend to be very privileged to that change at the beginning. So I understand perhaps a little bit earlier on what that change means to me. And I think as senior leaders, we need to be recognizing that privilege is that we are kind of getting more foresight. So we are perhaps slightly further on our journey as we go through that change.
Andrew, sorry, hi, this is Bharat here. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just got a message from the organizers that if you have some slides, you will have to.
Yeah, but they're not. They're now not. I sent them over. I thought they're not prepared. I do apologise. I could probably go and try and find some slides, but let me go. In that case, if you want me to do it quickly, I can quickly go into my screen. I do apologize, I've let you down.
So if you have any slides, you will have to share the screen is what I wanted to convey.
Yes, no, that's fine. Let me put some slides on the screen then for you just quickly.
Thank you.
That will be make it easier for you guys as well. And we can definitely talk about some of the points that we were discussing. So I do apologize, guys, if that, let me just put my change slides on the screen. Sorry guys, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
You can. Okay, so let's look at let's just go back then. Let's kind of start here. I'm sorry it's not kind of full screen for you, but often we talk about kind of change management, and actually really it's about change leadership. So that's really important. But when of course people are experiencing change, often we're looking at kind of two areas really. First of all, the challenge, and of course then the skill involved in making that change. And clearly, if the challenge of the change is significant, going to drive considerable anxiety within our teams. However, if our teams have very high levels of skill and are not particularly being challenged through the change, that leads to lots and lots of boredom. So the kind of hotspot here really is, we're increasingly challenging our teams as we go through the challenge and the change, but also significantly improving their skills, which of course gives us perfect growth. When we look at change, we often talk about kind of like the clarity of sort of 4 key things really. So we need to have a lot of clarity for our team. That's the goal. The specific actions that our team members are taking on that particular journey. But critically, that's the easy part of change for me. Actually, the much harder part of change is dealing with people's beliefs and their experiences. And of course, if we don't align their actions and their beliefs and their experiences as we go through the change, it ends up being very, very chaotic. So we've really, the job of a leader and a manager in that change process is all about aligning our team. I'm going to just quickly show you this picture. This is obviously a chap called Evel Knievel. Some of you may or may not be aware of Evel Knievel, but he's the kind of father of the daredevil, really. So in the 70s, late 60s, 1970s, he was very famous for jumping over, buses, and actually very famous for jumping over Grand Canyon. And the interesting point about this, and the reason I talk about it, is that he is manifesting, or he manifested as very much a daredevil, someone who's taking a lot of risk, and famously broke every single bone in his body. But the reality here is that as crazy as he may have appeared as a kind of daredevil motorcycle rider, actually he put a lot of plan into the change. And I think for me, one of the secrets of managing good change is actually planning how we do that. So I'm desperately here trying to show you my my screen as an animation. Is it on? I wish I could share it as an animation, but it's like I don't think I can, so I do apologize, guys. But what you can see here is you can see Kubler-Ross. So you can see that when we are obviously starting the journey through change, everyone is going to feel a level of kind of happiness at the beginning because they think, wow, this might be a good thing. But very rapidly, we start seeing things like anxiety, we start seeing fear, we start seeing changes of the threat. We may even start to feel very demotivated. That may manifest into hostility before it kind of starts moving into gradual acceptance and then moving forward. The job of a great change leader is really about minimizing that dip. Any change we're going to experience at a dip, and of course it's about building the structure into that change so that people understand the journey they're going on. So again, clarity of purpose, why we're making the change, the key actions that everyone in that change needs to take, and then of course really working hard around the beliefs of the change and the experience that people are having during that change is very, very important as well. Of course, if we don't do those things, that dip becomes, huge. Of course, once the dip goes even deeper, it's much, much harder to recover it. So we're really in the business of making sure that the change kind of happens. So, for us, we talk about change being broken into 3 sections, and this is an interesting one, and I'm always kind of touch on it, and then we'll kind of close, I think, today on this particular topic. But really, when we look at people experiencing change, we characterize them into 3 categories. What we would call our embracers. They're genuinely enthusiastic, want to make the change. And then, of course, it's about those who accept the change, and ultimately it's about those who reject the change. The interesting group for me, when we talk about change, primarily is the acceptor group, because most people in the acceptor group will probably have may have bills to pay, children in education. They may not necessarily be comfortable with the change, but they tend to go very, very quiet during that change. They're accepting the change that's occurring to them. And of course, they're quite a dangerous group because we don't really understand what they're thinking and how they're really feeling. So what their beliefs are about the change and their experiences going through that particular journey. On the other hand, of course, we have normally about 20% of individuals who are actively rejecting the change. And that's a very interesting group. And what we typically see in poor management is actually trying to isolate or ostracize the rejectors in the organization. My strong advice to anybody who's listening to me right now would be to actually really focus on listening to the rejectors, because the rejectors are actually able to verbalize that change. They're actually able to raise their concerns about the change. And if we as leaders can then start to address those concerns, help them understand the journey they're going to be going on, actively, inadvertently, we're taking the acceptor population across the line, which is very, very important. So that gives us that kind of 80%. So it's very important that we listen to people through that change and we enjoy that particular journey. The change is really, as I said, it can be summarized in three things. It's about clarity. It's about making sure that we give regular feedback and we listen to feedback as we go through the change. It's about really helping people understand the part they play in the change. And also, of course, it's about how they kind of grow and develop as well. So most people, I'll quickly share that picture with you just at the end. I think change is I often talk about change being a perception game. So it's really kind of what people see. And you can see the image there. There's actually two images in one. So it's very interesting. Some of you will see a very young lady. Some of you may see a very old lady. Some of you may see multiple characters appearing on the screen. But I think that's exactly the point I'm trying to make here. It's really about understanding that people going through that change journey have different perspectives. They have different feelings about that. They see different things. And of course, change means different to different people. So as leaders, as I said right at the beginning of this presentation, we are very privileged because often we are ahead of the curve. We understand the change that's coming. We have time to understand the impact of that change on us. And of course, when we then start to communicate that change to our teams, that causes, we tend to be we've kind of understood what it means for us, and we fail to then listen other people who are at a slightly later stage in their journey. So really, for me, change leadership is really about understanding the emotions. It's about clarity, and that's very, very, very important. I'll kind of wrap it up there. But I would obviously love to have other questions from you at the end. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Hopefully that was useful for you. As with everything we do, I'm always very, very interested to connect with people and offer advice or guidance outside of this conference as well. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Andrew, for your time. So there are some questions coming in, and we will be asking you at the end of all these speakers have asked, right? So
I would love to answer those questions.
Yes, please hang on, and during the Q&A session,
listening and learning.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next we have Talat Sriraji Goldie, who is the HR director at Taaleem, who will be speaking next. A brief bio and an introduction about her. She has about 30 years of HR experience, and she has played leadership role across various industries and organizations, huge organizations like BP, British Airways, ABN AMRO Bank, and GlaxoSmithKline. She's a certified coach, and her core area of expertise is in organizational and leadership development, restructuring HR functions, among other strategic HR areas. She has also received various HR leadership awards at international levels and has written and has authored numerous articles on LinkedIn where she has a huge following. So please welcome Talat, who will be speaking on the topic, how to become an employer of choice. Over to you, Talat.
Ask me any questions while we're waiting for our next speaker.
Yes. All right. Okay. So just one of the things which I wanted to check with you was, what would be your recommendation on the approach of other organizations who are in similar positions, who are going through a huge change transformation?
I suppose that's a great question. First of all, I think for me, it's about really seeking to understand the impact of the change on the organization and really think it through, have that kind of strong structure about how we're going to do it. So that all organizations, all individuals are going to go through some type of kind of Kubler-Ross kind of curve. So we know that when we make changes, doesn't matter if it's job roles or it's a new system or process that we're introducing or a new policy, there's going to be some type of a dip in performance as we experience those kind of the emotions of change. So that's the anxiety, the worry, possibly even in some areas the happiness or the frustration, depending on what it might be. So we need to be kind of predicting that occurring as we take the change journey. So for me, great change leadership, as we mentioned before, it's about making sure that we have that structure in place. We build that bridge across that gap so that we are able to take our team members with us. So listening and really seeking clarity and understanding what people are saying to us, really kind of having a really good plan as we implement the change is very important, as opposed to just making the change instantly, and then you have to then pick up the pieces and the damage that causes.
Another one which I have is a lot of change initiatives fail, they for whatever reasons. And what, according to you, could be the possible 3 primary reasons why change management efforts do not see the kind of results they are started with?
I think, well, I'm going to probably say number 1 is clarity and purpose, what we're trying to achieve. I think that's really, so having that map and helping people understand why we're trying to make the change. If people understand why we're making the change, it becomes much easier. When that's really down to asking questions. So I think clarity is definitely going to be 1. I think the second one for me would be really about, my contribution as an employee or as a leader. What does it really mean for me? So what does a change mean for Andrew? What does it mean for Mohammed? What does it mean for Faisal? What does it mean for Fatma? So if those individuals understand the contribution that they're making against the desired outcome, that's really important for me. So they have a sense of responsibility. So they understand why we're making the change, and they understand the specific things that they're contributing as we make that change. And I suppose my kind of third one, if you're going to limit me to 3, it's really about consultation and listening. Because the more that we kind of listen, I think it's really important. I'm a huge fan of what I call minimal viable proposition. So I think sometimes, we've done some really amazing work here around sort of process and policy and performance. And I think one of the things that we always get called on and we get kind of hailed as being pretty incredible at is actually the speed of execution, but primarily the flexibility around that. So with, for example, our framework, we have our performance framework, the 8 knowledge areas. You can see it behind me. And when we obviously consulted with about 3,000 employees before the journey started, but once we kind of done the initial consultation, we didn't spend years and years and years perfecting it. What we did say was that we would then publish the framework and then basically listen to people as they wanted to make the amendments and the changes, which is really important. So we were very kind of open to that. So we were effectively, failing very fast and failing forward. So when someone identified a kind of like a challenge in the framework, or they had a concern about the framework, we were able to respond really, really quickly to that. So it comes down, if I distill that right down, it's about listening to the audience and making sure that you get something out there as quickly as you can. But it's kind of a minimal viable product, and then it can obviously it's a continuous evolution of what we're trying to do as an organization. So hopefully that gives you a bit of clarity around that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one more. Are change initiatives more top-down or bottom-up? I mean, the need for change is the frontline who is in touch with the customer a lot more. Are they the best proponents of change, and hence their feedback matters, or the people at the top who know what is the vision, what the organization is going to look like 5 years, 10 years down the line? Should they be hovering in the change?
Yeah, well, my advice, it's like there's a very sort of famous saying, what's the best way to take a bridge, right? So they say, what's the best way to, if you want to capture a bridge, what's the best way to do it? And the answer is both ends at the same time. So so I suppose for me, you have to have a strategy to deal with senior leaders, and they have to be brought in and they have to be aligned. But likewise, you need to be, working with the down up as well, so that they kind of meet in the middle. So there has to be different strategies for different levels. It's all, it's definitely primarily it's about changes about people, right? So they'll have different standards. So it's, you know, for me, it's people, it's about process, and about system. So there's three things: people, process, and system. And actually, the people have a different agenda to the systems guys, and they have a different agenda to the process guys. So, you know, they all have their own kind of like priorities. So it's really about making sure that everyone is aligned. And if you look at something like action-centered leadership as a model, actually making sure that you're spending equal amounts of time understanding the people's requirements, understanding the process requirements, and understanding the system requirements, it makes it much easier for you to be successful in the change. But yeah, take both ends of the bridge at the same time.
Thank you, Andrew. We have Talat here, and so if there are any other further questions, I will again pull you in. Thank you, Andrew. Hello, hi Talat. Hi, so you're on mute. I just introduced you. Let me do the honors again. So Talat, you are currently, from Taaleem, and a lot of experience in a lot of organizations like BP, British Airways, ABN AMRO Bank, and GlaxoSmithKline, and core expertise in the area of strategic HR, restructuring HR functions, organizational development, leadership development, and also you have received various HR leadership awards at international level, and an author on LinkedIn, where you have written a lot of articles, and to your huge following which you have. And you will be speaking on the topic of how to become an employer of choice. So over to you, and look forward to hearing from you.
So can everyone hear me now? Can you hear me, Bharat?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so first of all, a huge thank you to Andrew for holding the place for me. Clearly, I'm technologically challenged because I was really struggling to get in there. So thank you, Andrew. It really helps to have colleagues that support you along the way. Bharat, lovely to meet you. Salaam alaikum, good morning to everybody who's on this call, who's listening to this. I have just a few slides, and I think the slides have already been shared. If we can start to get them up, we can quickly take you through what I'm going to be covering today. I can't hear you, Bharat.
Yeah,
you're on mute.
Would it be possible for you to share the slides?
Gosh, now again, we're going to just waste so much of time for me to go back and find them, but I had shared them earlier, so it should be with you guys.
But I'll work with the organization to get them.
Yeah, I think work with them. Meanwhile, I can just start to talk a little bit about what the topic is. And really, it's about, you know, this era of every company have their logo, right? That says, God, you know, our people are our greatest assets, you know, and we need to ensure that we keep the best talent. We need to ensure that we attract the best talent. But truly, how many companies actually put a lot of thought and an action behind how they're going to do this? So it's nice to say all these things, and they sound wonderful, and they sound amazing to shareholders and to the board and to employees that are in there. But quite honestly, there are very few companies where I have seen true action and a proper plan that actually does make you the employer of choice. So there's a terminology in HR that's called, it's an EVP, and it's called, it's an employee value proposition. That's what it stands for. So my topic today, I've only got about 15 minutes, is going to really be around what is an EVP and how does a company build an employee value proposition. And I'm going to share a couple of samples with you of some great EVPs that I noticed and I thought were very, very good. And we can chat a little bit about those, and then happy to take questions at the end. So really, the employee value proposition really comes down to the purpose of a company. Okay, what is the purpose of any organization? And when you ask a shareholder, when you ask the board, when you ask a CEO of any company, and you ask them, what is your purpose and what are you there to do? I think some 2 or 3 of the things that they will always touch upon. I think the most important thing, obviously, is delivering on shareholder value. So if me as a shareholder has put money into your company, you want to see what is it that you're getting back for your investment. So I think one of the important things that ensures the oxygen and the finances in the company continue to tick along is to ensure that you're able to deliver on value to all your shareholders. So you have a loyalty to them. Whether you're a service, whether you're a product, whatever you are, it's so important, obviously, that your customers are what make you deliver shareholder value. Retaining your customers and getting repeat customers, again, excessively important. And then the third element, along with all the other things around SOPs and audit and compliance and governance and all that really boring stuff that HR gets really bored with, but we have to do, is attracting, motivating, and retaining employees. So I'm on the first slide. Thank you very much. On slide number 3, if we can get to that, Fatma, that's kind of where I'm wrapping up this particular chat. So it's, yeah, just the next one. Yeah, and that's, what we're talking about is, how are you attracting people? How are you actually motivating them to stay with your company? And how are you retaining them in what is clearly an extremely challenging environment where, other companies are ready to poach your employee, well-trained employee. What is it actually that's going to keep your employee with you and keep them motivated and engaged and staying with your company? So let's talk a little bit onto the next slide, please, on what is an employee value proposition. And it should be EVP. Sorry, that should not be EPV. Can we move to the next slide, please, Fatma? Thank you. Okay, so it should be one. There should be one before this, Fatma. I think you missed one slide. It should be called. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Thank you. So every employee, no matter where you are and whatever level of organization you work in, is always going to ask about, so why should I work for you? So what's in it for me? Okay, and there are 5 key areas, and there's lots of research that's been done on that. And there are 5 key areas that employees are looking at that they feel adds value. Again, let's be really clear on this. There's a huge perception gap I found between what an employer thinks employees want and need and what the employees actually want and need. Okay, there's a huge gap. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of companies that actively listen to what their employees are saying. There are not a lot of companies that are picking up on the body language, picking up on those, on the writing that they don't actually say, or the writing between the lines. They don't really read between the lines on what is it that employees actually want. So here are the 5 key areas. So obviously around compensation, are you fairly compensated when it comes to how your value is placed when it comes to the market? Can you as an employee put your hand on heart and know that what you're paying for this position is the correct, is the right amount when it comes to their skill sets, when it comes to what this position is valued in the market? And this is really important. Shouldn't really depend on who negotiates a better contract. It really should be around what's fair. So your compensation system, how you compensate employees, is there that level of salary satisfaction in the employee? Does the employee feel that if they work really hard, if there is inflation in the market, that there will be considered raises in line with how the basket of goods change and how the environment changes and how expensive it is to be living, or your what we call COLA, or your cost of living allowance? Can I get promoted if I'm a good employee? And do I have a career trajectory in your company? What does that look like? Can you show me, visualize that for me? Again, around timelines, what are the timelines? Do I need to wait for my boss to retire before I can get promoted? And if that's the case, I need to know that, right? As an employee. Is there fairness around, and this is the most important thing to me, is does an employee think an employer is fair when it comes to their policies, how they apply their policies, who it's applied to, or are there sacred cows to whom no policy applies? And that happens in a lot of organizations too. And that creates not a great feeling in most employees when they see that. They live with it for a while, but a lot of employees leave for that reason, where they perceive that there hasn't been fairness in application of policy, in promotions, and how people have progressed. And then that all comes down to your evaluation system. Do you have a great evaluation system that keeps up with the times? Do you have a good performance management system? Are employees clear about what is expected from them? What kind of performance is expected from them? And what do I need to do to get to the next level? It's a very simple question, but there are so many employers that struggle with answering something as basic as that, because nobody wants to create any kind of I don't want to say this because I'll be held to this. So really, from the management side, take ownership, take those decisions, be fair with staff. We then get off, obviously you get on to benefits. You know, are we in line with the market? I'm not going to go through these one by one, but, you know, hopefully you'll have this presentation. But really, again, we go back to market, we go back to companies that are similar to yours. How are you comparing yourself? Are you looking out? Are you looking at what's happening in the market, or are you still operating in your own silo? And this, again, I've seen in so many companies where they're just operating in their silos and they're completely ignorant as to what's happening around you. Again, we go back to the whole COVID thing, the whole flexibility around working hours, you know, and there's still companies that will stick with, no, you need to be seen at work. I need to have you there. I need to see that you're working. I need you to do so many hours every day. Oblivious to the fact that employees now, more and more, especially if you're looking to hire young, energetic people, they actually want some kind of flexibility in how they work. Again, we go back to your performance management system. Do you have a great evaluation and performance management system? If you do, you don't need employees to show face every day. Honestly, you don't. Again, you get back to career then, and we go back to point one. How do I progress through this organization? What's next for me? Are there enough training and development opportunities? Are you investing in me? A lot of employers will not invest in their employees because they feel, oh, what's the point? You know, we're going to put so much money into this person and they're just going to leave us and go away. Quite honestly, it's really, this is an expectation, a basic expectation for any employee, okay? And then finally, we get to work environment. And the culture of your environment is so important. One of a very, very old survey that was done talks about, the Gallup survey talks about what are the 10 things that employees said were really important in an organization that make them stay. And you know what one of them was so interesting for me was, you know, do you have a best friend in the organization? Do you have a good friend? You'd be surprised how many staff stay in a company, even though they get offered a higher salary, but because they have great relationships and they formed great relationships. People hate change, as Andrew said earlier. Change is tough, it's difficult, people don't want to move. Finally, next slide, how do you actually build your company? So you're probably asking, so how do I build my employee value proposition? Answer two very, very simple questions. Ask your employees this. Ask them why they think they should work for our company. Why should they work for your company? And second one is, why should they stay with your company? Okay, ask your employees this, two very simple questions, do a survey monkey, get them back. You'll be surprised with what some of the answers are. Build your brand, build your environment, build your culture around what your employees are saying. It's so simple, just listen to people. People just want you to listen to them. Work with your budgets, work within them. And you know, honestly, some values are free. Most values are free. The value of recognition, the value of just appreciating people, all of that's free. It doesn't cost you a thing. And you'll be surprised how many managers don't do that. Finally, the next two slides are really around two companies. One is Google. If you can get to the next slide, which is, you know, what is Google's employee value proposition? Okay, so, you know, Google are leading the change when it comes to an EVP. And you hear this all the time, you know, there's no doubt you'll have a very rewarding and fulfilling career. And why is that? Because they're always looking for people with new ideas and they listen to people. Again, we go back to the whole listening thing. What's actually happening? They're listening to new ideas. They're listening to their employees and they actually let you learn. They let you make a mistake and you learn from your mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn. The moment you feel you're going to get fired when you make a mistake, that's it. That's going to kill your innovation and that's going to kill any new ideas. And the next one really is around Nike. And again, Nike is an amazing company. It's got a great employee value proposition because their entire thing is built around their brand, which is around fitness. It's a culture of sport. And it consistently on a year-on-year basis from Glassdoor to so many, it actually wins a whole lot of prizes for why is it that people so badly want to work for Nike? Because the brand stands for respect. It is financially, it's secure for the employee, and it's an environment where you can thrive and you can move into many, many different careers across different functions in the organization. That brings me to an end. I'm sorry, I really rushed through that, but I had such little time. Thank you, Bharat, for bearing with me. and Andrew for holding the spot. Thank you.
Thank you, Talat. It's a huge topic, and kudos to you for covering a lot of the area in the 15 minutes which you had. We have a couple of questions. Again, I will ask you at the end once the other speakers have completed. So I request you to hold on. Next we have is Aisha Suleiman, who's our next speaker. She is currently the group director of HR. Yes, I see Aisha. Hi, Aisha.
Hi.
Hi. So let me introduce you to our audience. So Aisha is currently the group director of HR development at Rakes, which is Ras Al Khaimah Economic Zone. She is responsible for human resource strategy, services, policy, and program for Rakes. She has about 14 years plus of experience in strategic HR and an expert in turnaround and integration, with a lot of experience in leading organizations where she has helped them to transform their culture and leadership. She's been recognized as one of the 500 fabulous global HR leaders at the World HRD Congress and is one of the top inspirational leaders recognized by World Women Leadership Congress. Please welcome Aisha, who will be speaking on the topic, how HR can help build the organization of the future. Over to you, Aisha. You have 15 minutes, and we will be taking questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat, for the introduction and the opportunity. I'll just share my screen and start the presentation.
All right. Yes, the screen is just loading. Yes, we can see your screen.
It's clear?
Yes.
So thank you so much again for the introduction and the opportunity. And my topic will be more about how HR can help build the organization of the future. Let me first start with some of the quick details on the overall HR leader's role. As an HR leader, are on the constant work to create new strategies that can make organization dynamic, agile, and ready for the future. HR readiness brings together the right mindset and skill set, I would say, to constantly get ahead, supported by having relevant business model and strategies, which they are reviewed and revised on constant basis. HR leaders, we cannot really predict accurately the business challenges in the future and what my organization might face, but the right HR leaders can be the key to overcome those challenges and be ready for the suitable solution for the organization. In my presentation, I will give you a few ways of many ways HR leaders are taking in the organization to build future-ready organizations. I would like to start with the first point, which I think is about building up the strong organization health. So organization health determines the company ability to develop and communicate and follow a common business strategy by maintaining a high engaged workforce. Organization health is not only about the teams working towards a common goal, but it's also about how they can cope up with the organizational changes around them. And it's all about being happy, proactive employees that are ready for the new challenges and innovation. The second point, which is one of the important points, is about the leadership excellence. I would say that the successful leaders has a positive impact on the organization and the teams. Leaders determine the ultimate effectiveness of the organization as a character and as a skill that they are bringing. That these skills which they are bringing determines the way problems are solved and the tasks are accomplished among their team. Leaders do not really command the excellence, but they build the excellence. Excellence is all about being all you can be within the bounds of doing what is right for your organization. The reach of excellence, you must first be a leader of good character, and you must do everything you are supposed to do as a leader. So that role of the leaders are really important in building up or helping the HR leaders in predicting what the challenges they will face in the organization and work hand in hand with the HR leaders in overcoming that. The third point I would say it's about investing on the talent. It's all about reskilling, upskilling, and retooling of the organization. Talent management plays an important role in recruitment, development, retention, trainings of the talented employees for the most organization. Investing in the talent can be a great help to the organization, but choosing the right tool for the right talent is essential for the organization. And again, that really helps on the better results and better identification of these talents to stay and be retained in the organization. And I would come back to the importance of the leaders, because they will be helping the HR leaders in determining these talents and investing on them. My fourth point would be all about the communication, organization alignment, and organization preparation for the future really cannot be achieved without an effective communication. HR leaders, the communication is very important for them as a tool to be used. The organization, the management needs to communicate all the changes transparently to the employees. Either it is about the new strategies, about new processes, about new procedures, about the future plan, vision, mission, everything, which will allow the people really feel that they are part of the change, and they will be really proactively involved in these kind of changes. Other ways I would be highlighting it will be building the right culture. The company culture is an integral part of the business, and it really affects every aspect of the company, every aspect of the HR process in terms of the recruitment, recruitment of the top talents, or improving employee satisfaction, or training and development, or the culture which will be created that will affect these kind of processes. It is the backbone of the happy organizations. Without a positive corporate culture, I would say many employees will struggle to find the real value of their work. And this leads to the variety of negative consequences for the bottom line in the organization. I would say that the building culture became as a shared responsibility for the culture throughout an organization. Each and every member in the organization is involved in building up the culture of the organization they are working on. Their roles, their contribution, their accountability, their belongingness really help in building the positive and the right culture, which will drive the overall new strategies of the organization. One important part which really also helps the HR leaders in accomplishing these ways, which is the adopting the right technology and platform by the HR. So the human resources management is really evolving into a more technology-based provision. In many organizations, employees now see the face of the HR as a portal rather than the person. And this transformation of the HR service delivery is known as an EHR. As we are having our platform today, that we are using these virtual platforms for such a great event. And implementing EHR really requires a fundamental change in the way the HR professionals view their roles. The new concept is transforming the HR through technology, but the platform shall be really carefully selected by the organization and HR leaders that matches the strategy, the culture, the employees, the infrastructure of the company, because that will help really to accomplish the other elements of the HR processes. So the selection of the right technology is very important and essential in this part. And that will also include, I would say, about the employees which are working on the HR needs to have that mindset of the shifting, and it starts from the HR team itself. And if that mindset is there for these employees, it will be very easy to implement that mindset on the employees. So it comes from within. So the HR needs to start from themselves before they really embrace that change to the rest of the people in the organization. One of the important part is also, it's a new concept of embracing the talent mobility. So the talent mobility makes it very possible for you or for the organization to move people within the organization. It gives employees the opportunity to go beyond their standard career by learning new skills. It opens for them the doors to implement what they are learning in one particular silo department to another department. So it increases the collaborative attitude towards the between the employees and between the department. For organization, the talent mobility allows companies to create strong leadership pipeline while also improving the overall employee retention and engagement. That way, also creating these pipelines will help the HR to really concentrate on hiring the specialized positions from external resources, because they know that the internal resources or the internal open positions will be filled with the people who are internally can be eligible for movement between the department. The mobility also is one of the tools. It is also helping the employee who would like to change their career from within. So that is also embracing a new kind of tool HR can use to retain the employees and giving giving the employee opportunities to develop from within, instead of this employee deciding to leave the organization and join other talent pool. So that is one of the really very new tool the HR can be using by restructuring and using the talent mobility within the organization for these kind of changes. My last point would be about empowered learning. So to keep up with today's fast-paced world, it is essential that the businesses really take time to educate and allow their employees to learn on a continuous basis. Continuous-based learning is slightly different than the traditional educational style, which we get used to it from before, but this continuous learning is a relatively abstract concept that more organizations need to seriously consider for the benefit of their employees as well as the benefit of the organization, and to reach better results for the changes. This approach helps the employees to absorb new technologies and skills, and also a way to keep with the ever-changing work environment and development by improving the skills and the technologies changes in the employees thing. And that also as a support on my previous point on the talent mobility, because that continuous learning and getting the different skills within the organization and all the new skills employee needs make that employee equipped with the different set of skills which needed within the organization, and will help their mobility to different things. My last statement will be more about the importance of the HR role, that HR plays an essential role in developing the future company's strategies and plan by understanding the needs and the core principle of the values that make the company really unique. HR leaders can ensure that they develop the right programs, skill sets, employees, technology, all over the things which are really needed in the organization. So to focus on the staff, that the purpose they have been made to hire them. So the focus is more on the delivering the new strategy, delivering the new concepts and the values and the things which they are looking for. So it more lies with the people, more lies on the culture, more lies on the technology, and so it's a set of many things HR is using to help the organization plan for their future. That was the end of my presentation, and thank you so much for the listening. And if you have any question, I think that will be at the end of the all the topics.
Sure. Thank you, Aisha. We have got some couple of questions. I have made a note of it, and at the end, I will be asking you that. So request you to go on mute and please stay on the line as well. So next we have Dr. Saeed Al-Darmaki. Hello, Dr. Saeed. Let me introduce you to the audience. Dr. Saeed Al-Darmaki is currently the HR and Admin Director at Arabian Industries Projects, Oman. He has a PhD focused on HRM and innovation from the University of Technology, Malaysia. And he also has an MBA from Hull University, UK. With more than 20 years of experience in both public and private sectors, his core competencies lie in strategic HR, talent management, performance management, and leadership and development. He's been conferred with 501 fabulous global HR leaders of the world and a global HR champion in 2021 by the World HRD Congress. Dr. Al-Darmaghi is also a visiting lecturer in some of the higher institutes in the Sultanate of Oman at Business and Accounting Department. So please welcome Dr. Saeed, who will be speaking on the topic, how can we embed innovation into organization DNA, the role of HRM practices. Over to you, Dr. Saeed.
Okay. Yes, I say thank you for the introduction. Yeah. So now I'll put my. Yes. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It depends on where you are. I think you agree with me that nowadays, within this new era, each organization require a very powerful tools in order to sustain and gain a competitive advantage in the market. So despite its structures or size or nationality, it has to compete with other competitors in the market. So, and in order to that, it requires, as I said, a powerful tools and innovations. So that's what is my topic for today. It's called embedding innovation into the in all the business of in each organization, into the organization DNA. Yes, so our topics will consist of just some aspects like introductions of innovation, importance of innovation, creating innovative environments, embracing failures to drive innovations, and then I'm bringing the two of the frameworks. One is mine, the other is called 3 P's, means people, process, and philosophies. So be with me, and then of course we'll end it with a conclusion. So be with me in this short journey. Just there are many scholars and researchers have defined innovations, because till now there is not really a specific definitions for the word innovations. However, I try to select one which I feel appropriate to the topic. It says that it is innovation is the sum of all steps and process involved in turning an idea or a concept, that product, services, or experience, which is a value for a business or customer perspective. Looking into this definitions, few words, keywords, I will say, like it says, it is a step, it's a process, it turns the idea to or a concept into product or service or experience. And then the last, it shows the word value, because any product, any process, whatever, any idea without a value, it's worth nothing, And because whatever we what as a value, we have to introduce it to the customers, either internal or external customers. And if we don't show that whatever we introduce to our customers is not satisfied, we are, of course, we are not making anything, no progress in that. I missed one, which is important of innovation. Some of you or some people, they think innovation is not important and maybe it's a waste of time. There are lots of systems appearing here and there. Our people, efforts, timing, and all the things is consumed. But in my view, in my perspective, actually innovation is one of the important aspects nowadays we should focus. Why we should focus in the innovations? First, innovation, through innovations, we are gaining a competitive advantage in the markets. It differentiates us from others competitors, and also it gives us the satisfactions of our customers. If our customers are fine and they love whatever we introduce, then we are, our organization must be healthy. And then, of course, it helps in retaining our employee and give them satisfactions as well. The fourth is through the innovations, we can attract talent, because any talent or professional will not join our organization unless he ask and ask and ask, and he will see what's the benefit if I come to this organization. And last, the innovation, it enhanced our brand value. Now, moving to these slides is how we are creating an innovative environment at the workplace. There are some drivers to do so. One of them is trust. Trust, actually, it is a very powerful drivers. If we don't have trust, then the other things will collapse. So trust is, I believe Steve Covey said, he called it in his book, Speed of Trust. So trust is very important. And then we have to provide the space and safety environment, because if we don't have the space and the place where we can put our innovators, then it will not work. Time. We believe that timing is not, any innovations idea cannot be done in a day and night, so it takes time. So just be patient for the innovators. And the last one is the collaboration of other parties. The parties either they are external or internal. It could be your customers, it could be your suppliers, providers, or maybe your employee. So those are the drivers of the making or creating innovative environment. Well, I come to the slides where I left so, because people believe that failures is failures, and if they get into failure, means they are losing their markets, they are losing their business. But I won't agree with that totally, because failures is a learning. Failures is a way to improve. Let's just see in what great and innovators of global innovative countries say about competitive. I meant about what the global innovative company founders think of failures. For instance, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he says, one area where I think we are especially distinctive is failure. Here also, Richard Branson's Virgin founders, he said it's impossible to run a business without taking risk. IDEO slogans says fail often to succeed sooner. And then Sir Ken Robinson, he said, he's an author, he said, if you are not prepared to be wrong, you will never come with anything original. And the last of the, which is the statements where all of us aware of it, which is stated by the scientist Thomas Edison. He said, I have not failed. I have just found thousands ways that won't work. So that's how effectiveness of the word failures, which is experimental, in other words. The more you experiment, the more you try, you get more and you discover something which is better than before. Here we come to the framework which I myself designed. It consists of 3 variables, which is employee engagement, HRM practices, and then organizational innovations. Of course, in each one, there is a set of drivers, but if we go into what is the employee engagement and organizational innovations, we found there is a relationship, there is a positive relationship between them, and HRM practices is the mediator. It's a mediator, okay? And it's also affecting the employee engagement as well. So having these 3 variables with the sets of drivers, we can be an innovative organizations. Of course, I support the framework with the different theories, as you can see, which is set theory, diffusion theory, and ammo theory. Now we come to a 3Ps framework, I will say, of world most innovative companies, which is consist of people, processes, and philosophies. That's how we think of the organization, starting from the people, and then it goes into the process, and finally it goes into the philosophies. So it starts with the senior executive who are the drivers of the organization. Those are also the people who drive or encourage to recruit the best and talented people. And of course, there should be a balancing discoveries and delivery skills in a team or in a team or a company in each organization. That's the rule of the people. Whatever the people, they are in which layers, but that's how it should go in terms of people. And then we go into the process. Obviously, we have always that we say to any work cannot work with the process. So process here encourage employees to initiate, to question, to observe, to network, and experiment. Process also designed to hire, train, reward, and promote discoveries-driven people. Last but not least, we come to the philosophies. Each organization has a philosophy, and whatever is philosophies, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here is innovation is everyone's job, not an R&D. There is the lots of organization or CEOs, they think innovation is a rule of R&D or maybe HR. It is totally wrong. Innovation is a responsibility of everyone, from the middle worker or from the normal even workers till the CEOs or the MDs. So that concept of innovation, and it is only limited to certain department or certain people, it's totally not right. And then disruption is a part of our innovation portfolio. And the philosophy 3 said deploy small, organized, innovative teams, because how if we put people in just a small team, that will be more effective, than putting them in a big, or maybe put them in a very big committees, and that committees is just become a paperwork. Then the fourth philosophy takes smart risk during the innovations. That's what we said, the failures, the experiment. That's how we encourage the innovations. Here, a comparison of the two ranking 2021 and 2022. I got it from visualcapitalist.com, which is compared to 2020 and 21. We can see there are some organizations where they stay in the same ranking, maybe 1, 2, 3. That's how they rank. For example, Apple, Alphabet here, Amazon, Microsoft. Where we see also other, they move from maybe down to up or from up to down. There are organizations where you get like Tesla, it moves far, from here, maybe what it is. It was something like, yes, 11, and where it's moved in 2021, it moves to 5. There are, for example, Toyota also, it was 21, it was 41, it goes into something like 20, yes, to 21. And then we also finding that there are some organization which no more in the list of the competitive companies. That's confirm the word that says by Merrick, who says fast growth companies must keep innovating. Companies are like sharks, he says. If they stop moving, they die. We come to a conclusion where we can highlight saying that innovation should be a part of everyone's job description. We need to find and motivate entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs should be the employee, even our employees who are with us. That's our internal entrepreneurs. Develop an innovation strategy, and not only we talk about it, we dream of it, we should implement it. And then acknowledge the possibilities of failures and encourage risky initiatives. And last, innovation is a race, and we have to stay ahead of the game. And now I came with the important slides where I should thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Said. So we will be asking you questions at the end of the other two speakers as well, once they have done. So I request you to please go on mute, stop screen sharing, and we will bring in the next speaker. So the next speaker we have is Helena. Hi, Helena. Okay, so let me introduce you to our audience. Helena Wheatman is the VP of Customer Success at Wheat Solutions. She's an experienced L&D and customer success professional spanning a career of over 30 years and worked with global IT organizations like HP, Microsoft, etc. She's a strong advocate for developing an internal culture for development and growth, and she thrives in helping organizations enhancing their employee experience to become an employer of choice. Today, Helena will be speaking on the topic, taking a systematic approach to skilling programs, know, grow, and retain talent. So over to you, Helena. You have about 15 minutes, and we will. I will be noting down questions which come in, and we will be asking you after the sixth speaker is complete altogether. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Helena, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. So thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to talk today. So yes, as the moderator said, my name is Helena Wheatman, and I work for Elevate, which is a digital skilling organisation. As well as providing digital skilling programs for governments and enterprises across the globe, we also have a talent management platform called TalentWise. And some of those screenshots you're going to see today in my presentation. So my topic today really builds on a couple of things that some of the other speakers have been talking about. So Aisha was talking about the need for strategies for upskilling and reskilling, and Talat was talking about career development and how employees don't always know what they need to do to get to the next level. So I'm going to build on those topics today as I talk about taking a systematic approach to skilling programs, knowing, growing and retaining your talent. And I hope to share with you some practical tips and tricks to address the skilling gaps, which I'm sure everybody in the room today is facing. So last year, Microsoft completed a global survey where 41% of workers said they were considering quitting or changing professions. And I was actually one of those people. So I had spent a number of years at Microsoft, and last year I did make that decision to leave Microsoft and change my career. So you as HR leaders, I'm sure, are facing many challenges today finding the right people. So imagine if we were facing that higher attrition and 41% of workers did think that they were going to change jobs. So I think what that means for us is that we really need to think about new skilling initiatives to know, grow and retain talent. But before I start, let me just give you a very brief introduction in terms of who Elevate are and what we do. So we work with governments and enterprises around the world delivering digital skilling programs that support education initiatives. And for governments, we deliver employability programs. So as an example, in Latin America, we are working with the Costa Rican government and AWS, looking at upskilling for citizens for employability. We've also got a similar project in Africa, and we're really proud to have recently opened a digital centre of excellence in Qatar in conjunction with the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology and Microsoft. And as well as delivering these programs, we also use and sell a talent management system, and something Aisha was talking about. And this is called TalentWise. And it came about because we realized that the fourth industrial revolution was having a major impact on companies, and companies, including ourselves, were realizing that the widening skills gap that was being brought about by the revolution couldn't just be addressed by new hires. And so we developed a platform that helped us and helps our customers to look at how they upskill and reskill their employees. And that was how TalentWise was born. So we're using TalentWise in Elevate to track our learners, assign them to learning journeys, see their progress, and assess their skills. So that's a little bit about us. And now I just want to share a couple more stats with you. So we've talked about the 41% of workers considering quitting. We've got 94% of employees agree that they would stay longer in a company if it invested in their training. And 70% of employees say that they're on their own when it comes to developing careers. So something Talat was talking about. One stat that isn't on this screen, which I think is really interesting, is that 50% of employees over the next 5 years will need reskilling in some way. And that's a really significant number, and it places challenges on all of us as leaders as how do we fill those gaps in a very practical and tangible way. So where do we start? So I believe there's 3 key steps to taking a systematic approach to skilling programs. So the first step is about knowing what talent you have today in your organization. So what talent do you have? What skills do you have? And then what do you need for the future? And as technology is changing so fast, this is an ever-increasing problem to try and keep up with knowing what skills you might need tomorrow. Once you have identified what skills you have today and what you might need for tomorrow, the next step is how do you grow that talent to fill those gaps? And then thirdly, how do you keep that talent when you've spent loads of time and money onboarding people, nesting people, training people? How do you become the employer of choice and an organization where people actually want to stay? So let's look at those challenges, starting with knowing your talent. So organizations today probably don't really know what skills they have in their organization or what skills they're going to need. And also identifying skills is quite a difficult thing to do. What we tend to do is we tend to self-report our skills. So we give employees a piece of paper and with a list of skills, and we ask them to tick a box to say what skill they have or what skill they think they have. And then we say to the managers, can you have a look at this and tell me if you agree and you think that they have got those skills? So the skills aren't really validated. Also, rarely in my experience, do organizations link skills and competencies to job roles. So for example, my background has always been in the technical organizations. And what we tended to do was we tended to apply all the skills to every technical role. We never really looked at the individual roles to say what skills those roles actually needed. So what's the solution? So firstly, skills do need to be assessed and validated using robust assessments. And those skills don't have to be technical. They could be soft skills, they could be management skills, and maybe we even need to assess people's aptitude and attitudes. And then if you match what skills are needed for each role with those validated skills, you then get a really clear picture of where the gaps are. So you don't just get to see what gaps individuals have, but you also see where the gaps are across your organization. So as an example, if you have 200 people with a particular skill, but you know you need 400 people with that skill over 10 to 15 roles, you can then start to plan your skilling initiatives. And so what you're doing is you're actually basing your skilling initiatives on data and not just guesswork in terms of what you think you have in your organization. And a talent tool can actually help you to slice and dice that data. So what you can see here is, here's a list of my skills, and I can see what level of those skills, whether they're junior, intermediate, or expert, I have across those skills across the organization. And so being able to slice and dice data can really help you make decisions on who needs skilling, when they need it, by individual, but also by role as well. So the next challenge is about knowing, once you know your talent, is then how do you grow that talent? So taking a build rather than buy approach. So one big problem that we tend to have as organizations is that we roll out big training initiatives to all of our employees, whether they need them or not. So we don't take into account that people have different starting points depending on their skills, on their knowledge, and on their experience. Another problem that we have is that we all have probably very large LMS or learning management systems, and quite often we ask the employees to go and self-serve. And what people tend to do is they tend to choose the topics that they're interested in. So things that they like and things that they're probably good at. So how do you know as a management team that your learnings, that you're investing in the right learnings and that you're going to get the right skills for the future? So what's the solution? So imagine if training programs and learning journeys were designed to address an individual's skills gaps. So you've already identified what those skills gaps are in the knowing your talent in step one of this process. So imagine if you only gave employees the content that was relevant to them. For the employee, what this means is it saves them time because they're only doing the training that they need, and it's taking into account the knowledge and experience that they already have. But also it makes them really feel that the company is really invested in their personal development. And from an employer perspective, it makes sure that you're spending your money on training that's truly going to be impactful. So you're training the right person on the right content. So this slide just shows you an example of, let's say, an Azure engineer. It's showing me what skills they have and what skills they need, and then what training that they need to do to get there. And for the individual, this really looks like it's a personalized learning journey specifically designed for me and where I need to get to. So knowing skills, growing skills is really important, but then how do we retain talent? So as organizations, we spend an awful lot of money onboarding people, training them, putting them through nesting maybe, getting to them to a point where they are confident and competent to do their job. And then we hope that they stay. But as we've seen from those stats that I shared earlier, many people are leaving their jobs or changing careers. And COVID has had a massive impact on this as well. So as we've all been working from home, I think we've all realised that we don't really need to live in close proximity to where we now work. And COVID times have showed us that we can work remotely. So we have much more choice now. The whole global market has really opened up for our employees. And so the balance of power has really shifted. So employers have got to think differently on how they retain their employees. And one way of doing this is to help employees see their future, help them see a career path with all of the options that are open to them and how close they are to achieving their career goals. And I think this supports what Talat was saying around how employees perhaps don't know what they need to do to get to the next level. So most companies have career discussions once a year and talk about the next move. And I've been through that process. And normally you only ever talk about one job and one position that might be open to you. And I wonder how many employees really look at that and really think that that's a possible option for them. And if a recruiter or another organisation came knocking, I think sometimes it's quite an easy decision for the employee to go, yeah, okay, I'm going to jump ship. Imagine if an employee could visually see their career path, something like you're seeing on the screen now. So they don't just see one option for them, but they potentially see all their options that are open to them. And not only that, but then what experience do they have today and what do they need to get to in terms of learning and experience for them to make that move to the next level? And I think if most employees could see this pattern and see what career path lays ahead of them, I think they might think twice about leaving. And as HR leaders, if when we've got a job vacancy and we used our talent pool as the first pace of hiring, that sends a really strong message to employees that our organisation takes career development seriously. So in summary, if we know our skills gap and we're creating relevant learning and hiring programs, not just for now, but for the future, if we put that together with a build versus buy workforce strategy to grow talent within, I really believe that this will result in employee retention and loyalty, and also help us as organisations become the employer of choice. So thank you very much for the time and the opportunity to speak. Elevate are at the exhibition, so obviously if you want to know more about what we do, then please do visit us at the exhibition, or if you've got any questions about talent management, then please do reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alina, for your time. And yes, please visit that exhibition for more information, and especially even if you would like to see a demo what they are doing. Great. Okay, so on to the final. So Helena, for questions, we would be taking them after the next topic, which would be presented by Mr. Kareem Abu Bakr. So Kareem, yes, he's there. So Mr. Kareem, if you could switch on your camera, and I would like to introduce you to the audience as well. So Mr. Kareem works at the intersection of mental health, management, and education. He's a co-founder and co-CEO of Mirka, an advisory board member at various organizations. Kareem has a wealth of experience in management education, working with a variety of organizations on educating and growing their management layers. Building upon his background in psychiatry, he is focused on the challenge of promoting workplace mental health through bettering managers and management practices. So please welcome Kareem, who will be speaking on the topic of management and mental health. Over to you, Kareem. You have 15 minutes, and we will be taking question and answer for the entire panel once you complete your speech. Thank you.
Thank you so much for it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and welcome. Very happy to be here. My talk will be about a topic that is quite close to my heart, which is mental health. It's also a topic that has been gaining traction over the past couple of years, primarily, I think, due to COVID, but efforts have been underway for the past decade or so to start promoting mental health within our workplaces. And taking a look at the practice, HR practices within companies for the past 2 years or so, there have been lots of efforts to actually attempt to promote mental health through mental health programs or through what we call well-being programs, wellness programs, whatever you choose to call them within your organization. In this very brief talk, I will be attempting to do two things. First, I will attempt to provide a framework that brings a little bit of structure to our thinking with regards to the types of interventions that we can bring into these programs. And then I'll build a very brief case for one particular genre of interventions that we can undertake. So without further ado, let's get right into it and start investigating the kinds of interventions that we can potentially use or do to actually promote mental health within workplaces. This particular framework is borrowed from the field of public health, and it tells us that when you think of an intervention, any intervention, especially within the health sphere or scope, you can think of it as either a primary intervention, a secondary intervention, or a tertiary intervention. And each of these levels of intervention, should we say, has its own aims. It also has its own drawbacks. So let me walk you through them very quickly. The first, obviously, are primary interventions. These interventions aim at what we can call prevention. They tackle the root causes of issues, and they usually require organization-wide work or very specific work that tackles very specific root causes. Interventions of this genre or this level typically includes things that like organizational restructuring. They can include interventions that attempt to change job design for particular jobs, the improvement of management practice, work that targets cultural change within companies, and so on. It's pretty widespread, and it aims at removing the root causes of mental ill health or a lack of well-being or stress, if we want to use a simple word. Secondary interventions, on the other hand, they go towards, well, first, they address the capability of people to cope with stress. These particular interventions are very widespread, and from what I've seen over the past 15 years, most companies, when they attempt to go for a well-being program or a wellness program, it will mostly be formed of secondary interventions. There is a lot of reliance on secondary intervention, partially because they're quite easy to implement. They look like a lot of the things that we already do. So, for instance, if you have a stress management training for your people, if you bring in a mental health webinar for your people, I'm pretty sure many of you have done that across the past 2 years. If you choose to bring in yoga sessions, for instance, or for mindfulness training, these kinds of interventions entail the company or the organization actually saying, like, listen, we know there are root causes, there are causes of stress within the organization, but let us focus on empowering you as an employee. Let's give you the tools that enable you to deal and cope better with stress. We're not addressing the root cause, we're addressing you, and we're trying to make you stronger, basically, and more capable of dealing with stress in a more healthful way. Tertiary interventions, this is a rare genre, but it has been on the rise moderately around the world. The region still lags behind, I think, a little bit in this particular area, but tertiary interventions target people who have fallen off the wagon, so to speak. So someone has suffered from stress for a long duration of time, has affected their mental health to the point where maybe it really affected their performance, or they had to take sick leave, for instance. Tertiary interventions come in to either help that person come back to work, return to work. So it includes return to work programs. It includes providing counseling or access to therapy for people who might need it within the organization, and so on and so forth. Employee assistance programs are also bundled as part of the tertiary interventions. So here we have 3 levels of intervention. Primary interventions tackling prevention, primarily. We want to eradicate or eliminate root causes. Secondary interventions, which work on building resilience in our people. Resilience is also one of the buzzwords for the past 2 years. And finally, we have tertiary interventions, which aim at treatment and rehabilitation for people who actually need it. The gold standard in my field of workplace mental health and well-being is primary interventions. So these are the kinds of interventions that practitioners and researchers in the field of workplace mental health hope that most organizations and companies actually take up. They wish to see many more primary interventions, primarily for the reason that, well, they tackle the root causes. So they're actually a lot more efficient in tackling issues. There's also a moral case for it. So instead of telling people, listen, you need to learn how to deal with more and more stress, and instead of us asking in interviews at times, whether someone works well under stress and so on. Let's aim to actually create healthier workplaces. So these are some of the reasons why primary interventions are seen as a gold standard. I mentioned risks or root causes. The term that we use in the field is psychosocial risk factors, psychological and social risk factors at work. So these are the risks that are inherent in a workplace or prevalent in a workplace that can affect mental health and mental well-being negatively. Let me give you some brief examples of such root causes. One particular categorization that I think is very useful is the one that I present to you here. It tells you that when you're looking at risk factors within the organization, you want to look at different levels of analysis. So some risk factors will be particular to specific jobs, and these are job factors. They might not be present for all members of a particular working group, but rather they can be looked at the job level. Some group factors can be looked at within the context of a particular team, a particular unit, a particular department, and so on. And finally, some organizational factors that can be looked at and studied at the level of the organization or across the organization. Very brief examples, very quickly. Job factors: high workload, excessively high work intensity, low levels of control and authority and autonomy, and so on. These can be risk factors for particular people in a particular department or particular part of a particular department, people doing specific jobs, while their peers do not really suffer from such problems. And I think that's very prevalent within organizations. Group factors include things like low levels of social support within the team, low levels of managerial support for a group that reports to a particular manager, the interpersonal relationships within this particular work group are not really healthy. There's a lot of conflict, and so on and so forth. Finally, organizational factors, we can look at things like organizational change, and especially mismanaged organizational change, unhealthy organizational cultures, high levels of stigma within the organization, and the like. Which brings me to managers, because this talk is called Management and Mental Health. So when we take a look quickly at the role of managers and the role of management practice with regards to these particular risk factors, I think that you will see that managers are quite accountable and or can be held accountable for a lot of these particular risk factors. Let's take them step by step. First, job factors. High workload and high work intensity. Is that within the domain of control of a manager? Certainly, it has to do with capacity planning and work management. At times, it has to do with skilling of the people and development of the people and so on. Low levels of control, autonomy. Managers can be micromanagers that intentionally take away autonomy and control from their people. Conflict, especially role conflict. Once again, that can easily be seen within the domain of responsibility of managers. Lack of growth, lack of meaning. Meaning at work is something that's apparently very influential on mental health, and a job in which I see no purpose, whether that's a very personal purpose or social purpose, can be quite hazardous to mental health at times. All of these can be related to particular roles of managers or responsibilities of managers, such as the design of systems and the design of work systems, managing work, managing people, designing jobs and and organizational structures or team structures, and so on. If we take a look at group factors very quickly as well, low levels of social support, that can be, managers can be very strongly implicated in this particular space. They can be agents that lead to lower levels of social support. If that particular manager is not really good at what we simply call team building and team formation, and they don't really make positive contributions to team spirit, to use a simple term, and so on, that can backfire in the form of low levels of social support, as well as bad interpersonal relationships. Low levels of managerial support. This is a very direct responsibility of managers. This has to do with whether I have a manager that has my back, whether I have a manager that actually supports me in my work, whether I have a manager that's empathetic to my work-life interplay, and the responsibilities that I have outside of work, and the list goes on. Obviously, all of these fall very clearly within the domain of managing people and managing teams, which are traditionally seen as priorities with regards to management development and managerial development. We take a look at organizational factors, mismanaged organizational change, unhealthy organizational culture, high levels of stigma. All of these are responsibilities of managers at different levels, and leadership in the company can also be quite strongly implicated in that. And it has a pretty strong role to play here as well. So my argument simply is, if we want to tackle root causes, if we want to work on primary interventions, one very direct way of doing that is simply improving the practice of management. So instead of, or before, or along with having these physical well-being programs, having these yoga programs and physical health programs and so on, before we start giving people stress management training and you might want to look at another genre of interventions that you're already undertaking, which is management development and your approach to management development and the kinds of programs you have in that particular area or arena. And you can use those. These can easily be used as tools for promoting mental health and well-being. The investments that you put in the development of your managers and the development and improvement of your management practice within the company can easily be seen as an investment in employee mental health and well-being. This is, I think I've kind of built the logical argument for it, but there's also an empirical basis for it. And studies are proving that one of the most effective forms of intervention are interventions that tackle managers and the improvement of management practice. I'll just leave you with a quick view at the levels of intervention. Once again, most of our programs heavily rely on secondary interventions. Some companies, and they must be applauded for that, have started to include tertiary interventions as well. What I see lacking strongly in our region is a view of primary interventions, identifying risk factors and tackling these risk factors. And one very easy way to work on that is management development, because it already is something that we do, and we can just do it more cognizantly and more mindfully. Thank you so much. That brings me to the conclusion of this brief talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fred.
All right. Okay. So I would request all the other panelists also open the camera and come on board. And we are missing Andrew and Talat right now. But if there are any questions for them, we will be taking them on that behalf. So yes, do we also have Aisha? If you could be around, please, whenever you are ready. Okay. To Dr. Saeed, I had a question. We had a question. Yeah, so it was around innovation and failure. How do you embrace failure? So one of the questions was, what do you think are some of the changes which could be made in the HR practices which will ensure that failures are embraced?
Yes, because lots of let's say CEOs, they believe in trial and errors. They believe in we experiment and all. But when things goes wrong, lots of question why and why. And just everybody should believe that if those people are not really have that encouragement to make mistakes, which is I will say it constructive mistakes, of course, not in the financial statement or something. This is the only way in order to improve their wares or their process or their product and all. So instead of just limited with the failures, which is for the department or for the management is a killer. No, it should be a tools for people to what we said to release them from that fear and to give them the power and the motivations, to go ahead with it, and they become the real innovators of the organizations. Because we as top leaders, we have to encourage the people, and the people themselves, they have to feel also confidence to do so, confidence to go into steps and create. And because actually innovation cannot come without just by itself. It goes into the stages It comes as an idea or it's a concept, and then it goes to the creativities. After the creativity, it goes to innovation, and even we don't expect, of course, when we say innovation, that all people will believe in us. We'll get people who resist too much, saying no. We'll see people who are the innovators, who are the first founders of the idea, and it goes to, of course, to the people who will say the early the early joiners, then the others who come late, majorities, and then there are the people who are laggards, who will not believe in you, whatever you do. So that you skip. Don't believe that everyone will support your idea, but never stop.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, very well said, because what really should not happen is we are an innovative company should not become just a slogan on the wall, right? How do you live that every day in your management practice? And without any changes to your process, which encourage people to try new things, it will just remain a poster on the wall. Great, thank you. Next, I would like to ask Helena. Helena, what do you think? A lot of organizations go through these talent management programs, right? What do you think differentiates an also ran, which is not supported by business, which people see as okay, just a day out for me to just attend some trainings and come, to something which I can take back to work, which will help in my development? What differentiates these mediocre talent management program from a great talent management program?
I think the thing that differentiates it is that personalized approach, and making someone really feel that their career path, their learning, their development is really personalized towards them. So I think that whole process of, the starting point, assessing someone's skills, really understanding what experience and skills and knowledge that person has when they come into an organization, then makes them feel really valued in the fact that if I'm then being given my development plan, it's really personalized towards me, and it's not just something that's very generic. And so I think a talent management system that takes that into consideration, makes people feel valued by the organization, helps them to, and I think retains talent as well, because then I think people that work for organizations where they really feel it's personalized towards them and the company has an investment in them, is likely to stay longer. So I think that's the difference between a good talent management system.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Aisha, thank you for joining us. Let me check what's the question for you. Yes, on talent mobility, I really loved your concept of empowered learning. But really, this is a question which I grapple with as well. Who should own development? Is it the responsibility of the individual, or is it something which the company should take care of?
I think it's a shared responsibility. People think that the training should be provided by the HR only, or the company needs to assign these courses and the employee will do it. So it's a very shared responsibility distributed in different percentages of accountability, to be honest. Yes, the company's responsibility would be to support the HR in providing the available budget and put the plans and align everything with the strategies they are having. HR's role is more of providing tools, helping them in identifying the training needs and analysis, and working closely with the leaders in the organization to identify what's the need of their employees in the organization in order to develop them. Of course, there's a responsibility lies on the employee. What if the organization is not having enough budget? HR doesn't have a plan. Does that mean that the employee will sit without developing himself? Now you can see that everything is available online, free of charge, many audible trainings, many recorded trainings, many articles, many books. The employee himself proactively can really develop him or herself by having that kind of a feeling that he wants to really develop himself. So I would say it's not one person is really handling, or one aspect is handling that. I think it's a very shared responsibility. Everyone have an in-hand on it, and everyone needs to know his role towards the development of that employee.
Great. Yes. And that's why it's empowered learning. Everybody's empowered.
Exactly.
Right? Thank you. All right. Mr. Kareem, I really loved your take on it's not about because it's really great to do, easy to do initiatives. And this is the first thing when you think about well-being and mental well-being and mental health is what you think about is, okay, what initiative we can do. But really loved your approach and was very refreshing that, no, there are below that, there is the root cause. We have to look at the management practices. So thank you very much for that learning and insight. So in that, related to that, what advice would you give to a company that is considering or just planning to launch a well-being program and not fall into that trap of let's do initiatives, it's high visibility, and it will make HR look good and all those, right?
Yeah, it's a very nice way of putting it. You're at like the idea of making HR look good. I think that's quite important as well. I think I'll be realistic. Okay, so to be a little bit more pragmatic, I will not say just stay away from the initiatives and the well-being initiatives and the let's say having a physical activity week or such things. I think these are important and they do bring a little bit to the table as well. But I would say hand in hand, while you design a program that will last for maybe 3 months or a year, that will have things such as healthful eating, such as attending mindfulness sessions, such as having a retreat for so and so and so, and having such interventions. At the same time and concurrently, start a real effort to understand and identify the main risk factors that are present within the organization today. So risk assessment is a pretty big deal here. And my advice also is with regards to risk assessment, because I see this with a lot of companies, they go towards the organizational level straight away. So they try to look for risks that are prevalent across the organization. There is a logic behind that, but I would argue that it's much better and much more insightful to actually look at different levels of analysis. So within specific core groups, look at job-related risk factors and so on and so forth, all the way up to the organizational level. And at the same time, look for, before I get into that, how can I do that? There are surveys, there are tools that you can use for that. There are risk assessment tools that are readily available that you can use, but also you can use already gathered data, already collected data that we have. If you look at exit interviews, for example, if you conduct real exit interviews, that's a source of data. If you look at engagement surveys, if you run engagement surveys, look deeper within the engagement surveys, and so on. So even if you don't have the budget or don't have the ability to launch a full-fledged risk assessment, look at the data that you're already compiling and collecting. Moreover, maybe start to create small task forces within different units that aim at, let's say within a year's time, work on making improvements in one risk factor. So we have a call center, and this call center suffers, and one of the big risk factors is shift work and the nature of shift work and the design of the shift. Just have a little task force that has a deadline of a year to work on addressing that. I think these can actually be much more economic as well, because a lot of these kinds of interventions, they don't really require budgets in the first place, and they will bring about real change. There's a meme that's been going on for the past 2 years where you have this employee who suffers from high workloads, and HR just says like, yeah, I have the solution, go to a mental health webinar. And I think that's very true. It rings really true. We need to be more concerned with risks and addressing risks. I think that's my main takeaway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Syed, the next question, this is from the audience. Are there any criteria or parameters that govern the staff development process?
Yeah, see, always, of course, the criteria change from time to time. Our criteria, it is always global, but before the pandemic is different and today is different, of course. So in order to go into that, we have to go into the index of how to be a top innovative companies. So I will go to everybody, go into the index, global index innovations to read that more. It's of course it's quality wise, and we have to read it in a proper way, because it changed from one year to another, and we have to follow it. But what I can see also here about the innovations, innovation is not only limited to one group of people, like employee or staff. It is a three layers actually, which is starting by frontline innovations, and then it will go to the middle coach or the managers, and then it goes to the executive or the senior leaders, and all of them have a rule, and that rule or process, and that process can be also divided into three, which is creation, integration, and reframing, and of course each one has its own rule. Like for example, in frontline innovators, in creation, for instance, constantly look, as a frontline innovators, they have to look for new ideas that create value for the customers, because that we need to always to dig what the customer requires. In terms of creation, for the middle level coach, for instance, they have to coach, they have to motivate and encourage the employee. And for in terms of creation for the senior levels, they have to set time and to encourage the performance of the employee, set incentives, for instance. So similarly in the integrations also, it requires some participation in motivating from the frontline innovators. It should also require some link ideas, because linking ideas is important. That's why we said collaboration, because collaboration cannot only being built by only employees. It should be all the involved parties, starting from the employee, it goes to the customers, even to the community, and all the stakeholders. We go to if we go into the reframing, of course, each of these layers or the three have also a great role which has to support it. For instance, instead of in terms of frontline innovators, we have to look for new and non-traditional ideas where we should dig it, because that's how we distinguish ourselves from other companies. Of course, for the coach also, they have to give frontline motivations, because they are the second line. Similarly, the leaders have to create the atmosphere, good atmosphere, where at least the talent should stay and remain in the organization. Because if the top leaders are not really caring about this, then the whole talents will go to some organization will take care of them. So that is as a brief just about how we go in it, because it is not also small, it is a complex, it's a complex process. And always we have to think also, there is something where we call just don't fix the things until it's break. We should not do that. We should fix it while it's not breaking. We have to watch, we have to see how we make it, how to make the improvements, because the innovation by itself is a continuous improvement. So if we just waiting till it's break, then no value. And also when we get opportunities, we have to dig, we have to run. We don't have to wait unless others will get it and adapt it. So immediately we have to follow, we have to improve, we have to encourage the people in order to enhance the innovation and make it and convert it from idea to or from creativities to innovations.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Yes. So a couple of more questions. This question, I would like it to be a little bit more open, especially I'd like to hear views on it from Helena and Aisha. It's on talent management again. And how do you strike the balance between customizing the learning journey with scale? What I mean by that is, as HRs, we do not have unlimited budgets, right? And if I am looking at developing hundreds of managers, I really, how do I balance each one's individual learning needs with creating a program which addresses the entire segment of my population within the budgets, right? So What are your views on that?
I'm happy to start, and then I don't know if Aisha is around.
So please go ahead.
Okay, so I think the starting point is about understanding what skills and competencies you need for a role. And I think that's the starting point. I think sometimes what we don't do is we look at what skills do our managers want, and we come up with a whole host of skills that our managers want, and then we invest in all this training, or we use LinkedIn Learning or some other learning tools and LMS systems that are out there, and we have so much learning. And I think what companies don't always do is to say, so what are the actual skills that individual roles need? And then by matching the learning to the individual role, you're then really targeting the learning and focusing on the right skills. And then, as you say, if you bring people in and do assessments, you then know their starting point. So you then know where their starting point is. So it's not about customizing the whole of your learning journey just for one individual, but it's about, here's my learning journey, which I know matches the skills that I know that role needs, but where does the person start on that learning journey? We don't all start at the same point. So people have different experiences, they've worked in different companies, they've had different life situations, we have different attitudes and aptitudes, so we can take that into consideration as well. And so I think that's the point. The scalability of it is about knowing the skills per role and the competencies per role, and where do I start on that journey.
Aisha, you're on mute, please.
Yeah, sorry. I would add to what Helena said, that yes, defining the scale and the competencies, it's very important, and this is how I would start, that I will define the competencies required per position and the skill set which is required, and then I start to make the assessment and doing that. However, if there is the constraint of the budget is there because of many elements, I would start these kind of journeys with the critical roles in the organization. I would rather prepare the critical or identify the critical positions and very technical based positions in the organization, which are important and critical to the new strategy or new goals of the organization. And I will focus on these positions as the starting point for that. Of course, the journey will be the same, identifying the skill set and everything, but the focus will be on a limited population based on the budget which is available.
Excellent. Yeah. Karim, would you like to add?
I think I'd like to jump in on that as well, if you allow me, Brad. To add to the fantastic points made by Helena and Aisha, I think allowing a degree of autonomy through providing resources, learning resources, multiple learning resources on the one hand, and particular opportunities, because I think learners take away what they need. Learners customize their learning experience, whether you like it or not. They take different things out of the exact same classroom. And I think that's something that's inherent in adult learners. So if you just allow by design for that, if you allow for more resources to be available, it allows me more choice with regards to picking and customizing. And if you allow parts of the experience to be outside of the classroom as well, such as an assignment on which I'll receive feedback, individualized feedback. So that's through design, you actually allow for customization, even though the framework is the same or yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Wow, great. Yeah. So really cool ideas on how to utilize the limited budget which we always have, right? Okay. Karim, your point on assessing mental health, right, has, I think, generated some interest. So what would you suggest platforms? So you said if you don't have budgets or resources, you could use your engagement surveys, exit interviews data. But then if you want to do that risk assessment, what kind of platforms can be used?
Actually, I think one very useful tool is offered free of charge by the Health and Safety Executive of the United Kingdom. It's available for free, and you could download it and use it directly. I think that's the one tool that I would recommend, because it does not involve a budget in the first place, and it's very well built, very well validated. So I think I don't need to add anything to it. I think that's one very strong tool.
Can you repeat that, please? Health and?
The health and safety executive. If you're interested in the field of work like mental health in general, I think one of the best organizations that are doing some fantastic work. Obviously, it's for the UK, so it's the health and safety executive of the UK, but they're doing fantastic work. They have magnificent resources that are freely available, and use them, experiment with them. You might want to tweak them a little bit to suit the culture and to a little bit of localization over time. But as a starting point, I think they're fantastic. So health and safety executive of the UK.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question from the audience to Aisha. Aisha, what do you think, what is the value that employee brings to the organization in return for the specific training it provides? So what is the value an employee brings in return of the training which is provided to him or her?
So the value, I believe that the value which will employee retain, it will take time to really show. It's not something immediately you can really examine and assess. But for sure that the new skill sets, the new technologies or the new things which they are learning, they will add value to their own operations. They will be able to really have multiple skill sets where they can really implement while doing their job. It will make them really equipped and be ready for the next steps in case they are really implementing the changes and the things they learn around things. These trainings really bring the new technologies or new skill sets and competencies which are going around these employees, and they help them to really see what the things were missing in them, which really help this training to fill these missing parts, and they will really put it in return on the daily work they are doing. The value will take time really to show. It will take time to really return it, but I think the leaders themselves, they can assess that while seeing what's the difference they are making in their daily work after getting these kind of trainings. But for sure, for their individual development, for individual thing, they will be gaining different skills, which they can really assess and they can really implement in their daily work. And that's where the value will start to show.
Another audience question, this is to Helena. Helena, I appreciate how you highlighted the importance of retaining employees. However, how do you convince your superior of the importance of maintaining the employees in the company? So how do you convince the management that you need to maintain the existing employees?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that everybody's facing is about the challenges of hiring. And I think if you look at the cost of hiring versus the cost of actually keeping and retaining your employees and training your employees, that is a massive selling point to senior management. It is becoming increasingly difficult to find people. And I think maybe everybody here will also acknowledge that salaries are increasing, because I think people have a lot more choice. Wages are going up. And so I think that's perhaps one of the biggest arguments is actually around the cost of finding people, the time it takes to find people, and then when you've got to pay people once you find the person with the right talent. And so I think the build versus buy strategy has some very strong arguments for it.
Thank you. Okay, so we're just about 10 minutes from time, and I would like to now go around the table. We have done with the questions which was there, my questions and from the audience. Around the table, a couple of minutes for you to give your final thoughts on the topic of the session, which is how can next-gen HR leaders adopt new ways of business and become employers of choice? So what would be your parting thoughts on how do we become an employer of choice? Who would like to go first?
I think of employees as a customer of sorts. I think that brings a lot of good when you start thinking of your employees as a customer and someone that you're attempting as an organization to create value for. So we're not just creating value for our external customers, but there's also an internal customer, our people that we are attempting to create value for. And as with customers on the outside, when you attempt to create value, sustainable value, and maintain your competitiveness in the market with customers, you need to listen to customers. So I think if I'm thinking long-term, that's the main thing that I would advise. Just listen to your customers, listen to employees, listen closely, and listen urgently or listen with concern, and really attempt to learn more about them, learn about the patterns and the trend, look for patterns with generational changes and so on, and experiment, to take from Saeed's words, just experiment with different forms of creating value for these internal customers. Exactly the same way we do with external customers. I think these would be my parting words.
Thank you very much. Elena?
Yes, I'm happy to go next. So nobody wants to go first, and then Karim, you go first, and then you say what everyone else was then thinking. So, so there's a positive and negative for going first.
There's a perk, yeah, there's a perk there.
Well done, you, because I think one of the things, I had a few minutes then to think about what I was going to say, but I think one of the things that immediately sprung to mind was I think as organisations, if we want to become employees of choice, we've got to put our employees in the centre of what we do. So very much, Karim, your point about, you know, we look at our customers and we put our customers in the centre of what we do, but actually we need to put our employees in the centre of what we do. Because if we do the right thing for our employees, we have happy employees, we have motivated employees, we do the right things, actually that manifests itself onto the customer experience as well. So, you know, you've got the right people, the right attitude, the right environment, you'll get the right outcome for your customers. So I think I completely agree with what you say there. I think the other thing that we have to do is we have to look at what our employees want. I was looking at doing some work just recently so Elevate is part of a bigger group called the YMB. Within that group, we have an outsourcing business, and we recruit early in career people, so Gen Z. And we have done a lot of work looking at what do Gen Z want from their employer. And it's very different from what I want from an employer. They are very much into sort of that lifelong learning. They're very much into sort of charity and what does the organisation give back to the communities and the countries where they are. And so I think as employers, we have to look at that as well. And we have to look at what our employees want. And if it's Gen Z, maybe we have to have a refocus to look at the things that are important to them that isn't necessarily important to me, because I'm a different generation. I'm a long way from Gen Z, but I've got different needs and wants to their needs and wants. And I think as employers, we have to think about that. Otherwise, we will not be their employer of choice. And one of the things they're looking at is, what do you do for the communities around you? That's one of the first questions they ask. And if we can't answer that question, they're not going to come and work from us. They're going to look for somebody else that does have those give back policies in place.
Yeah, thank you. Aisha?
I think HR's role is really becoming harder and harder with the changes which is happening in the organization and around us. And adding to what Karim and Helena said, which I totally agree with them, I think HR roles is also in balancing out between the needs of the employees as well as the need of the organization. And in this, putting the things in a balance, it is very important, because we cannot just listen to the employees' needs and then ignore the organizational need and this and the opposite side. So I think putting the balance between the needs of the organization as well as the need of the employees, it will give a really good balance and the insight to the HR to prepare these generations and make the things which are proper as a win-to-win situation for both. So this is what I would say as my point of takeaway.
Thank you. Okay, so let me add my 2 bits as well to this. So I come from an engagement background. So and studies have shown that the needs of people across generation are pretty much similar, right? Like across generation, people need autonomy, people need freedom, and caring, and all those. But the way they want is what is different, right? So for a Gen Z, freedom would mean everything. From the way they organize their work, from their timings to their career path, and for an older employee it would mean something else, right? So as an organization, we need to understand that older practices might not apply for different generations of people you might have, and for you to remain competitive and be an employer of choice, you need to be conscious that how do I evolve my process to appeal to different kinds of group I want to attract, and then create my process as such. That is where the balance would come in, and then for sure, as Karim and Helena said, you need to put employees at the center of everything if you want to become the employer of choice, right? So thank you very much, panelists. It was a pleasure hearing to your thoughts. I take away really a lot of practical learnings, which I can take back to my work, and I hope the audience as well feels the same. I look forward to meeting you again.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you, Aisha. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Barat, and all the speakers for this knowledge of the next generation and future organization. Now that we are moving on to the 1-hour networking break, I would like to invite you all to utilize this break to meet and interact with our sponsors and exhibitors in the exhibition area. We will soon come back in the second session at 2 p.m. Qatar time. See you.